Alrighty, looks like we're streaming. I think so, anyway. We'll assume so. Okay, and then we do this stupid chat crap. And, yeah, that worked. Mostly. Except we have to move it the hell out of the way. Over here, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. And such. Something like that. Okay, so comments. I think different subjects a little bit, maybe. Do some brozo comments and some other comments. And so we actually have a comment, on the, on one of my videos, which is just so unusual. Wow. A comment on the video. So this is the part that really does, show me how I just don't have the right audience. Because there's so little of this kind of feedback. You'd expect something more where somebody would pop in and say something about some specific little subject and pick it to pieces. But anyway, it doesn't happen much. Anyway, we'll read this. Sort of, I don't know. It's an argument. This is minutia, frankly, but this is what people do, and so okay, I have to play. I think the bucket and rain analogy. So he's going to scrutinize the analogies used to compare or illustrate in some other way. Like explain how having, like say if you want to analogize having a pet. It probably wouldn't do you much good to talk about goldfish if somebody's getting a cat or a dog, right? But if they're getting a cat, then it would probably be a better analogy to talk about what it's like having a dog. But, it's... Anyway. So, yeah, there's better and worse analogies. But, frankly, for my purposes, I think my analogies are perfectly satisfactory. But, whatever. I think the bucket rain analogy is better than the spray paint one. Yeah, and I think exactly the opposite. And it might just be because I've done a lot more painting than you have done, I guess, maybe. But I also like the idea that the paint sprayer sort of, you don't think about crashing into paint going sideways, right? You just sort of think about it hitting the surface. And that's sort of how gravity works. You're only talking about the action in towards you. You're not talking about, well, I ran into a bunch of existing rain. Where, like, say, running into rain, you're a big, tall thing, and you got a very small head, and so there's very little profile to the source of the gravity, where the part that's hitting the rain that's already in the space you're going to run into, that's a lot of water. Anyway, so that's what he's going to talk about. Anyway, better than the spray paint one. The spray paint one actually made me confused about whether the bucket rain logic should even be conclusive. Whatever. I'm sorry that's what it did to you. I'm saying all the analogies work for me. They're all positive things. They all say, oh yes, it is kind of obvious. Alright, this is because while driving in the rain these past few days, as it has been rain forever, because of some monstrous... They should call these things something. I mean, they're not hurricanes, but they're these big, giant blobs of storm that just meander for years. What it seems like years. They should call them something. I guess they call them fronts or something, but I don't know. They should call them something. Anyway, I noticed that the faster I go, the less my windshield wipers would rub against the glass. So that's good that you're observant, a sign there were more water collecting on the car. So the faster he went, the more rain he was hitting. Because he's hitting more of the rain that's in his way, that's already, horizontal to him. It's not that there's more rain falling on him. So this is opposite to the bucket analogy. I guess that's why I used a bucket, is because it has sides and you can't get in except through the top. So you can't go in the side of the bucket and get into the bucket. But anyway, where the bucket collects less water, the faster it moves through the rain. Yes, and technically you probably would collect less water, in a sense, if you thought about the water hitting the top of the car But anyway, what's confusing about the running through the spray paint analogy, see, so I don't think you're going to find anything that confusing about it, but anyway, let's see, is that it likens gravity to something that can be collected sideways, where I would argue it's exactly the opposite. You're less likely to crash into the paint because the little sprays are going really fast. Yeah. Anyway, where the bucket analogy correctly likens gravity to a downward force of rain and avoids bringing the surface area on the sides of the object. Right, so he's talking about, so again, the paint analogy sort of gives you the impression that you're spraying paint on a surface, you know, and it's flat. So it makes the thing you're running through the rain flat. So it's less, you're not thinking about the little edge that's hitting more paint. You're just thinking about the surface and how much stuff is hitting the surface. So to me, that works. But anyway. Let's see. Whereas, okay, sides of the object. Okay, and the fact that raindrops are actually in place along the vertical path into the equation. Yeah, so obviously, again, and obviously me running would be creating me as a very vertical object, which means I have a very horizontally large profile. But again, that's thinking way too much. That's breaking the analogy by just not recognizing that, yes, if something's going this way and I'm going through it this way, that the faster I go this way, the less of this stuff could possibly hit me. The bucket has given volume. The bucket has a given volume, yes, and you can only get into it through the top, and gives us that to focus on instead. Yes, but it's also more abstract. Okay. Relevant because the opening to the volume can only be accessed in the downward direction. And I mean abstract in that nobody ever walks outside with a bucket. You know, so it's, you know, that's it. You know, it's a limited, just because it's not commonly applicable. It makes me think of a recent live stream you did on the lever experiment, where you pointed out that the lever is useless when tilted all the way up because gravity doesn't work sideways. Well, it's not that it's useless, it's still a lever. So, I mean, it's still doing leverage things. It's just that it's not being influenced by gravity in that position. Gravity isn't doing any of the storage of energy. You're not fighting gravity. Well, gravity is going to be neutral in either position, but the point is that obviously when it's in this position, it's not moving up and down in gravity, neither side, where obviously when it's in this position, one side's moving up into gravity and one side's being assisted by gravity. Also, when it comes to how you say there is only a push force, so now he's going to pick on that. I think a good way to example this is with air suction. So I think that's the worst thing I could possibly do, is bring up stuff that is pressurized by a medium, you know, by some, you know, where people really aren't going to think about the air as being individual molecules being forced into contact with each other. Anyway, in the word suction, the word suck intuitively makes someone think there is a pulling force. Yeah, I know. Well, the whole point is all the pulling forces, okay, the ones that look like a pull, intuitively do look pulley. And it's not until you think about it that you say, oh shit, I mean, even pulling on a rope. Well, yeah, I mean, it obviously looks like I'm pulling on the rope, but if you think about it, no, your hand is actually pushing in the opposite direction on the rope. So you have to think about it. None of these things work unless you're willing to do a little thinking. But it can be thought of as happening due to the difference in air pressure, where the word press makes somebody think of pushing force. I know, but the argument is then you have to keep track of your pressure, right? Because you've got to say first there's the molecules are trying to push apart from each other, and then the environment is pushing that push. So then you have two pushes. Now it's getting more and more complicated. This can be related to how could objects... Okay. This could be related to how cold objects don't cool hot objects. So right there, I would say, whoops. I mean, that doesn't sound right to me intuitively. What do you mean they don't cool hot objects? The hot runs right into the cool. The hot is leaving the cool. That's pretty much cooling, I think. But anyway, the hot objects are the ones with more energy. Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks the cold one is got more energy. So I don't know what the confusion is you think people are going to have there. I don't think I've used hot and cold much, but anyway, in the case where something is going to be pushed into an area of lower air pressure, yeah, it's a subtle case, right? Because the fact is that is when the other area had a higher pressure, it was still being pushed exactly the same. And so in a sense, you need a lower pressure to have your push go anywhere. So pushing against a brick wall doesn't work. You need to push against something that will yield. Someone could get the impression that the area of lower pressure has more energy. I don't know exactly how they would get that impression. Or power because something is moving toward it. I don't know who would get that impression. I really don't think people are that intuitively broken. I think they think the fire is something going out. And I don't think they think cold is coming out. I think they understand that cold is taking. But anyway, and thus it brings attention to itself. But they should be reminded of explosions. For the objects in the environment move away from the area with more energy, with more pressure, with more weight being imposed, you could argue, because more weight being exchanged, because things are banging into each other more. Let's see, how else to say that? Well, I think this is all fine. I would put this in the category of, wow, thank you. I needed my nitpicked. So, but fine, I'll take whatever I should have gleaned something from it, I don't know. Okay, I always have to, the bucket analogy is good because at least the bucket is open in the right direction, so you can't get confused about water coming in the side of the bucket or the bottom of the bucket or some other place. So I guess that works, and maybe when I should use the paint analogy, I should emphasize that you're painting a very flat surface. Whatever. All right. Sandy L. I don't know what that's all about, but anyway. Seek help. You are an asshole, and you wonder why no legit science YouTube. So again, I don't call them legit. I call them popular. Okay. The Borg is speaking. Okay, and you're just a little Borgy. Alright, science YouTube wants to have anything to do with you. It's not about wanting to. It's about having the balls to. It's okay. It's about the fact that they're very uncourageous on their own, and they can't even be bribed with thousands of dollars. They're such fucking cowards. You're just a little beaver coward. Okay? You're a coward. Oh, these people are just so pathetic. Look in the mirror. So I make a video every fucking day. I don't need to look in the mirror. I have them right over there. I mean, I see myself every day. I love watching my videos. I'm fantastic. Now, if I went to your channel, I won't find any videos because you suck. That's just the way it is. You're the one who needs to look in the mirror, and you looked in the mirror and you said, oh, fuck, I'm a goofy looking beaver. And you barfed and then said, oh, I'll just be a troll. Because that's all I can do. I'm too weak to do anything better than troll. I can't actually make a physics argument. Pathetic. So I'll leave that comment just because it is marvelously vacuous of any kind of any merit at all. It just doesn't have a single bit of logic or reasoning or fact or anything in it. It's just perfectly describes the nature of the argument provided by the alternative position. The alternative position folks can't do anything, you know, but invade my privacy or make some crack about how I need to look in a mirror. Now, look, calling me an asshole doesn't mean anything. I mean, frankly, to me, just because you can't show me somebody on this planet who's not an asshole. Okay, so, yeah, we're all defective. There's no really great robots walking the earth. You know, so, but whatever. It's irrelevant. What I am is an asshole making arguments, and the counter arguments absolutely suck. And that's the truth. That's a fact. Alright, so I guess we'll go to graph physics for a moment and just see if there's anything here. I don't think there is. Oh, look at that. There's something new. Alright, so maybe I'll make this bigger so I can actually read it. Which I should be able to do by clicking this, right? No, by clicking this. Yeah, that should do it. And then I have to just do this again and just say this, and there we go. Okay, so I should be able to just move that over so you can see it. Should be able to do that. Oh, I can't move this. I have to move this. Alright, got it. There, isn't that polite of me? Alright, let's see what this fun will be. No, you're not actually going to do that, because the only thing that can... Okay, so I apparently have to read his earlier comment. Alright, I don't know what this thing... This was back to this Dr. Ting thing, so it's something to do with the Dr. Castro thing. And the Castro thing was hilarious because this lunatic emailed me. And there's two different Dr. Castros. There's actually one that works for the Department of Energy, and there's a different Dr. Castro that worked for NASA. And they can't even figure out which one the other guy is. It's just hilarious. Anyway. Let's see. I think I already dealt with this. So, ING first did the experiment without any additional lever length at the end. Right, and then he broke something else. So there's just no point, because he either does the experiment broken in one way or another way, and in none of the experiments does he care about, you know, again, consistent releasing mechanisms. Just wait, you complain. So he added additional lever to one of them like you recommended. I never ever suggested doing any experiment with an imbalanced lever, so that's just an insanely stupid lie. But now you're complaining that additional lever is there. Well, of course I'm complaining because it's additional weight, and the spring has to lift the additional weight, which compromises the function of the lever. So, yeah, it's a real problem. You want to pretend it's not a real problem? Well, go ahead and pretend, but you're just pretending. And apparently want both to have extra length on the ends. Yeah, the whole point is to try different experiments on the same balanced lever, not to make longer levers and shorter levers and all kinds of length levers. That's not the point. But anyway, which would be the same as having just the weights on the ends, which is what he did originally. Again, if you want to argue about how catapults work and you're an expert on catapults, then show me how you got this expertise, okay? Because I don't see it. I don't see you link it to anything explaining how catapults work, because it's not really a balance. It's a catapult. All right. So anyway, let's read this new comment. It's good that you agree with Walter Lewin. Okay, so this guy's going to say something that is completely opposed to the other guy, right? Because, you know, yes, and I agree with Michio, okay, thinks the world is a sphere, okay, so me and him agree the earth is a sphere, but that's about, you know, we don't agree on much else. Certainly don't have the same taste in anything else. With Walter Lewin, that putting half the mass on a spring attached to the wall gives the mass half the acceleration. So the fact that Lewin uses the word acceleration means absolutely nothing. Nobody rational could imply that Lewin meant, well, I meant the rate of acceleration, and because it is moving faster, the rate of acceleration only happens in a shorter period of time, and therefore the object only moves 1/4 of the speed. I'm sure that's not what he was implying. So he was clearly implying exactly what he said in the other video, which is twice the mass, half the speed. So it's just such a lie that because he used the technical term of acceleration, that he meant anything other than the net acceleration. He didn't mean the 1/1,000,000th of a second acceleration or any other kind of unit of acceleration. He meant the net total change in the velocity. Anyway, now why don't you acknowledge that the acceleration, see, this is the gimmick they're going to rely on. Now, why don't you acknowledge that the acceleration occurs for less time? So there was no way did Professor Lewin indicate that the object wasn't going to be going twice as fast. In every way, that was what he wished to imply. And you're just playing a game because you used the technical A instead of the V, that somehow he would have wrote the formula differently. He wouldn't have written anything differently if he put V's in there because he believes in conservation of momentum. So M1V1 has to equal M2V2, the same formula basically. And he would agree with it 100%. He has written it 100%. So you're just playing a game to say that he doesn't believe in conservation of momentum. And again, I can play the quote of him over and over again. It would be a violation of conservation of momentum if what you say is true, that it only accelerates half the time and therefore doesn't accelerate. Okay, doesn't go faster. By a factor of the proportional to how much mass you add. So if it didn't conserve the momentum, Professor Lewin would have said, look, here's an example where it doesn't conserve the momentum. So even though I said nature can't finagle momentum, here's an example where it can. So this is such a cheap, stupid, silly manipulation of verbiage. And they're the ones doing the evil thing, where they're trying to imply that Professor Lewin actually doesn't believe in conservation of momentum. It's just such a lie to put those words in his mouth. All right. Because the spring pushes the mass away quicker, ? So that's the gimmick they're using. They're saying even though he said it gets twice the acceleration, he really meant it only gets 1.4 the acceleration because it only accelerates for a shorter period of time because it's going faster. When he didn't really mean, yes, it accelerates by a quantity that's twice as much. He's talking about the quantity of the acceleration, the full 30 miles an hour versus 60. He's talking about the quantity of the acceleration, not over what period of time it takes place. All right, that debunks your retarded nonsense. So again, and you only did this debunking by slandering, frankly, Professor Lewin and everything he directly said, including everything Newton directly said. Okay, about half the mass, twice the velocity garbage. Well, frankly, those are his words, half the mass, twice the velocity, or twice the mass, half the velocity, or it's actually what he said. So who's slandering who? Who's doing what? I mean, kind of obvious you're the one cheating the argument. Okay. No, you're not actually going to do that because the only thing you can do is lie. So clearly the lie is yours. If Professor Lewin meant to imply that the object doesn't get twice the velocity, he would have made that clear. He was clearly saying you have to conserve the momentum. This input has to equal this output. So just play your game. I'll show you for the game players you are. And that's all you can do. And molest what other people say like a dishonest cockroach. So obviously I think I can prove you're the cockroach, and clearly if we could get Professor Lewin to answer the simple questions, he would prove that, of course, he didn't mean to imply that there was no conservation of momentum. You're saying he's implying there's no conservation of momentum, that the total acceleration will not equal twice the velocity, and therefore you will not conserve the momentum. I'm certain he didn't have any intention to imply that. So you're just cheating him grotesquely. That's how much respect you have for your scientists, is you will lie about what they're saying. All right, get what you deserve. So again, I can't say that any more clearly. So we agree on something, that assholes should get what they deserve. You're a slandering, lying, petty weasel, and you frankly should be in slandering, lying, petty weasel prison. Okay, which you, a pathetic rest of your life in someone else's basement. Again, who cares where I am? Okay. But anyway, making some videos over and over to no end. Oh, there'll be an end, okay, and you'll be part of the you'll be part of the whatever celebratory confetti, frankly. You know, your reputation will be shit. Maybe your ID will get known and we'll actually know what kind of scuzzy shit wrote this crap. You know, these constant statements impugning my character, these lying, scummy little cockroach comments of yours, okay, and we'll know who the fuck that person was. All right, and we'll write it on your damn tombstone. Piss our shit here. Please. That's what we'll write on it. This is officially declared a federal outhouse. You may shit on this grave. Fucking pieces of shit. Anyway. Alright, now to Brozo fun. Oh, just the internet never stops giving. It's just such a wonderful friend. What would I do without it? Let's see. I think this is it. Yeah, that looks like it. So now we have to move it over here. And it almost fits. Well, that's good. Then I won't have to move it again. Alright. So mindless marbles, which sounds just like that commenter, frankly. So it ought to be, you know, we probably could figure out it is him. And he does use my proper legal name, which is really rude. So someday maybe we can do him the same favor and give him what he deserves. Alright, so now DS is using Walter Lewin's piece where he said that putting a half-mass object onto a spring attached to a wall means that it's given twice the acceleration. And clearly when he said twice the acceleration, only an imbecile could think he meant, oh, I mean twice the acceleration per millisecond, and therefore it's not twice the total acceleration, it's only half the acceleration because, you know, it only accelerates half as long because it's going twice as fast. So accelerating twice as much doesn't mean twice as much because you're accelerating twice as fast, therefore you're only accelerating half as long, and therefore there's no acceleration. I'm sure he didn't mean that to imply that. Hilarious. This is just these games they play. Alright, anyway, someone has been pointing it out to him over and over. Yeah, somebody. Yeah. You're just so desperate that acceleration is not the same thing as velocity. Well, of course it is when you're talking about something going from 0 to some speed. The acceleration would be exactly the velocity. So if you're starting from 0, the acceleration described in any form is exactly the velocity. The outcomes are the same. For every bit of acceleration you have this new velocity, okay, the velocity of the acceleration. So it's just complete moronic nonsense to say they're not the same thing. Velocity is always made out of a previous acceleration. Alright, if that 2x acceleration happens over a shorter time, see, that's what they're actually saying. They're actually saying that he didn't mean to imply it's twice the acceleration because it's actually 0 acceleration because it accelerated twice as fast. So even though it has twice the acceleration, because it accelerated twice as fast, it only has half the acceleration, so 1/2 times 2 equals 1. I mean, it's just too stupid. Okay, then the final velocity isn't going to be 2x. Yes, it's going to be 0. The final velocity is going to be the same velocity. So it will go exactly the same velocity even though it has half the mass. That is not what Professor Lewin was saying, and you're just a lying sack of shit to imply he was. Okay. Like he keeps insisting, despite this being pointed out to him, he outright ignores this. Of course I don't ignore it. I have argued it repeatedly. I've read the moronic statement in the video. I've done it 3 times now at least. Okay, the silly argument that they're trying to slander Professor Lewin into implying that somehow he wasn't overtly talking about the net acceleration, the net product of the action. And the net product of the action was to double the acceleration, that is, the speed. And that's exactly what he was saying, because he does believe in conservation of momentum, and you're just lying to say he doesn't believe in conservation of momentum and that he somehow thinks twice the acceleration happens in half the time, so therefore it's no acceleration. No, he's not that fucking stupid. I mean, just amazing. Nothing Walter Lewin says or said contradicts Gosling's experiment, except the fact that he said overtly and decisively and with all kinds of theatrics, nature can't finagle momentum. So he clearly said it. Okay, it can fudge kinetic energy, but it can't finagle momentum. He believes in conservation of momentum, and Ian Gosling's experiment demonstrates a complete destruction of conservation of momentum. All right. So that's the lie here. The plain, obvious fact is Gosling's experiment does demonstrate, if accurate, okay, destruction of the conservation of momentum. So you have to believe that that nature can finagle momentum to believe in his experiment. But Gary will just twist, mangle, and misrepresent every single thing he can get his hands on. So it's exactly what they're doing, clearly. Perverting reality to this disgusting point where they actually think Professor Lewin was saying, yes, it's twice the acceleration, but the acceleration happens in half the time, and therefore it's only half. So it's 1/2 times 2, which equals 1. So there's no increase in velocity. I mean, it's just such a fucking lie. All right. It makes me so frustrated that he will just take straightforward facts. Yes, I also find it frustrating that our society allows trolls like you, lying sacks of hiding shit, to sit there and play with other people's personal life and their personal identity and all this other crap, okay, where you can't, you're too cowardly to expose yourself to the same vulnerability. You're such a fucking coward. You're just some cowboy with your 6-shooter, picking off the Indians. You're such an unmanly person. A ballless coward. All right. And then twist them to his own agenda, whether or not they make sense. So just exactly what you just did. You just perverted Professor Lewin into saying there was no increase in velocity, when clearly that's not what he was implying, and it's not what he was saying, frankly. So you are the pathetic liar. All right, and of course the brozo is way too stupid to understand any of this conversation, so he went way over his little brozo he had. He's just a clown. He's playing his piano. He's squeeze my nose. All right. It is indeed frustrating. I feel your pain. I've become caught up in a non-science project. Yeah, whatever. Squeezing his, welfare whore slut friend's boobs or something. Maybe they're going to sell the product. Working to a deadline. Yeah, I don't have to label the bottles and everything. So my own efforts have had to take a back seat. Oh. So 2 weeks ago, he promised he already did this great cue ball experiment, billiard ball experiment, where he's going to really prove that momentum isn't conserved. He's going to give us a decisive momentum is not conserved experiment. And he's going to prove once and for all that all these scientists talking about conservation of momentum have been full of shit. That's what he's going to do. Right, but never shows up. And then know what he does? He always changes the subject. So every time he has a video that he's promised us this perfect proof. Every time he talks about his perfect proof experiment, then he just changes the subject. And that's what he's going to do here. All right, the small upside is that while searching for something else of critical importance to this project, to whatever, I guess whatever his other project is, which is doing something for somebody else so somebody will like him, because he just can't live without people liking him. Okay, I finally stumbled upon some videos I thought had lost forever. You know, some of the other ones he never published that were, you know, whatever. I uploaded them as they are. So he has uploaded them, but he won't let us see them. Okay. Before I lose them again. But hesitate to publish because they are completely off the most recent topic. So somehow that bothers him. It's never bothered him in the past. Yeah, so what a pile of shit. So he's got some two-slit experiments, and he's saying he's not going to publish them, but somehow they're off the subject. Well, frankly, the subject can be anything you decide it to be, because you're not saying anything on the subject. You're not advancing the current subject, so why not change the subject? Because you've got nothing to say on the current subject. Okay, and I need to be careful, and I need to careful re-listen after all these years. So this is stuff he made years ago, so it's going to be really filthy. Okay, since making them, to check I have not said something too silly. So this is before he had a better camera, so who knows what it is. Okay, one of which is quite straightforward and relates to a comment you made years ago. So big subject change, which is okay though. In protest to DS unfounded claims that light doesn't vanish in certain regions when single slit is changed to a double slit. So again, they claim, all right, so even though I pointed out the radar experiment dispenses with all of this nonsense, photon plus photon equals no photon. Okay, this silly statement made. And essentially, you can create this interference through different methods. So I have pointed out that you could do a radar experiment, where you have two waves that are effectively going to interfere, okay, on either side of an antenna. Okay, so you have an antenna and you can send the waves in this way. So now you don't have two waves coming in and interfering with each other. You just have two signals. And the two signals will, in fact, create in phase, out of phase, in phase, out of phase, in phase, out of phase pattern. So it'll be the same pattern, and the two waves can't interact with each other. They just can't in space. So it negates any idea that this constructive and destructive is somehow happening in space. It has to be happening on the surfaces. All right. So that's part of the argument. The other part, all right, is this simple argument. All right, that when you have this pattern, so you're creating a single slit pattern, and you're going to, and we'll make this one bigger, so it's a little bit off balance, but you get the idea. So here's the pattern. We'll just put one out there, and then you can feel better about it. So here's the center. All right, so you have this pattern, and you're creating it with a slit opening. Okay, and what you're going to do is sneak in another slit. You're going to slide another two-slit experiment. So this is now, even after Brozo has conceded some of these arguments, he's now going to go all the way back years ago and try to slide in some of notion that the dead spots can be somehow magically, I can have two surfaces. Okay, so let's just put the double slit. We'll start with that. All right, so I have a double slit, and that means this pattern really I just should draw it over again. Ugh. Should make it precisely accurate. See, the trick is that these are infinitesimal slits, as I pointed out before. They just destroy, they turn 2-point sources into 1-point source, so there is no double slit pattern. So if the openings are infinitesimally small, I mean, bets are off in the sense that you have just effectively destroyed. So if I make this single impediment in the middle, can't change the fact that these two surfaces exist, and there'll be a connection to these other two. But if I make the slits infinitesimally small, then I take two surfaces and I put them really close together. As a source, that would look like 1-point source, one headlight. I can't make that two. I can't make a line anywhere where this line will be more than a wavelength larger than the other line. So there's no places where they could be destructive and constructive, because I can never change the length of the lines by a full wavelength or more. So you have to understand that if you do it by their rules, you can't ever have a double slit pattern, because you've taken a 4 surface experiment, you know, one, 2, 3, 4 surfaces, and turned it into a 2 surface experiment, because you've made 2 of the surface so close to each other there can be no possible interference from those locations. Alright, so we'll just do a quick double slit pattern here. Okay, dot, 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 and then we have to have 5. And then that means we have 3 here, and then we have 3 here. Okay, and then 3 here, and then 3 here. And we have these obvious dead spots. Okay, so we got essentially 2 patterns, the envelope pattern and the little pattern. As I've pointed out, this big distance makes the little pattern. This little distance makes the big envelope pattern. Okay, because of the number of wavelengths in the distance. The number of wavelengths you can cram in this distance, that's telling you exactly how many times you can have a place where you're changing the phase. So lots of changes for the big distance, very few changes for the small distances. Alright, so I do this experiment, I create this pattern. And so there's here clearly distinctive places where there's light, and there's places where there's less light. Let's understand, okay, the dark spots. His argument is if I somehow can completely annihilate this surface, alright, that I will have places that were dark that now will get light. So I'll have a place where somehow there was complete darkness, like this spot would be very dark. Okay, this is very dark, and these spots are dark. Okay, let's just concede that these gaps, these darknesses won't be as dark as this because of all this bleeding that takes place. But anyway, the point is he's going to say that there's some place that I'm going to now make a photon hit that it's not hitting with this slit open. So even though I have obviously more photons coming into the experiment, obviously you would speculate that all you can do is add light to locations. You can't subtract any light from any location. And so he's basically saying, you know, you cover this, and, you know, we have the one source, and he's going to make this dark spot light. So now this is going to have light at it. Even though I've taken away photons, I'm going to take a dark and now make it a light. And I'm obviously going to argue, no, you're not. It's not going to happen, because it's not how interference works. It is just contributions from sources, and you can't make more contributions by blocking one of the slits. When you block one of these slits, you will create half at least. It's 4 times less potential to make a photon, because the photons are being made out of bits. You know, 4 sources, 4 sources, 4 sources. And now you've taken away 2 of the sources, which means the odds of you matching are now a quarter of what they were before. So you're substantially dimming the image. And that all you're going to see is a relative change. You're not going to see an absolute change. So there won't be anything that actually gets brighter. It's just going to get lighter or darker compared to the other brights. And that's all it's going to do. So because the other brights are going to get substantially darker, the dark is going to look brighter. But it's not really brighter. Okay, so that's a simple argument. Now, it's this isn't exactly an easy experiment to do, because you have to be aware of all these exposure issues. So if you're trying to capture it especially, you do have to have a really good camera. I mean, an average camera is not going to do it, because it's constantly changing the exposure. You know, how likely a photon is to be created by the camera, so it can take pictures that people like to look at. Your camera won't take very good pictures if it doesn't constantly change the exposure to the environment. And that's a fact. So you have to have a camera that allows you to manually control the exposure, which generally speaking in digital cameras is a pretty high-end camera. Alright, so anyway, let's see. Let's see. Okay, uploaded them. He says something. I need to be careful and re-listen after all these years of making them to check whether I said something too silly. So I don't know how long that takes, but whatever. One which is quite straightforward and relates to comment you made years ago. All right, so we already did that part too. Claim that light doesn't vanish in certain regions when the single slit is changed to a double slit. So it's the other way around, when the double slit is changed to a single slit. I mean, obviously, if you're changing a single slit to a double slit, you're going to add a lot more photons. Okay, or to say it the other way around. Yeah, why didn't you just say it the other way around? Why? See, this is where if I was typing that, I would have just said it the right way around. Light doesn't appear in unlit regions when one slit of a double slit is blocked. Right, you can't make a photon disappear by adding another photon to it. So if there's a location where there's now a photon, I mean no photon, yes, there's a photon, you can't make it, that's the wrong way to say it again. You can't make a photon by by subtracting light. You can't give a location where a photon isn't hitting a photon, okay, by subtracting photons. All right, you hopefully explain this, helpfully, more lies, that this is essentially proof that the interference happens after light has left the slits. So they call it a proof. I'm just saying that obviously these experiments are, technically demanding, and he says he has some proof. Now I'd say there's no proof on the internet. I mean, even like, for example, the Veritasium experiment, where this was even discussed a little bit, but where he was trying to do the single photon at a time experiment, he couldn't get it to work when he allowed the experiment to run for a number of hours, to ensure that only one photon was in the experiment at a time. The experiment didn't work, and he had to shorten the time to 5 minutes. So he had to go from hours to a mere couple of minutes to force the experiment to work by basically guaranteeing that there are more than one photon in the experiment at a time. So I mean, it's basically proving exactly the opposite thing of the claimed proof. The claimed proof is so bad that it proves the opposite case. Okay. Which spoiled the hypothesis of mine, which I don't think I ever resolved. So his hypothesis has something to do with Lenz's law. He thinks the Lenz's law is controlling photons, which is really stupid. He thinks forces can interact with forces, which is stupid. But anyway, I don't think I've ever found an excuse to keep going with my idea, LOL. I'm sure DS wouldn't have let this fact rethink any of his own ideas. My ideas are just happen to be so much more superior than yours that I don't have to do that. I don't have these problems with doubt and stuff because I don't have bad ideas in the first place. Okay, I did come up with an excuse I was keen on for a short while until I realized this too didn't match reality. That's all by and by though. So that's the interesting thing. He doesn't talk about any of this theoretical stuff. So he doesn't make any theoretical videos. But somehow, I guess, he doesn't think all those theoretical conversations are worth having. Which, in my opinion, is hilarious. Because that's exactly what physicists have always done. They always talked about what they thought. And some of that works because you tell somebody else what you're thinking and they actually find the right way to use it. They find the catch you missed or some other thing. And so it's very helpful because you've inspired somebody else to find the right answer. But keeping it to yourself, how does that help? That doesn't help anybody. Now, yes, the danger is you end up like Faraday, that you have a bunch of these silly drawings you did, where there's a bunch of gears inside the atoms and there's little idler pulleys and there's all kinds of crap that obviously isn't the right answer. All right, the point of the experiment was, but the point is as Faraday did, he said, this is just my speculation and it's not an official theory. Okay, so, he doesn't have to live it down because, yes, it was just speculation. Okay, it was simply to repeat the test you said you've done. Okay, you said you've done. Blocking one slit and observing light going to places that didn't as a two slit. So he's using like whatever, cutting holes in cardboard and calling that a double slit experiment. Okay. DS, juvenile excuse, was that it only appeared that way because the light next to the dark fringes, made them look dark by comparison. It's a real phenomenon. I mean, I can show you the laser guy from MIT, right? The old laser experiments. He knew what the aperture on the camera was, and he knew the aperture had to be fixed, and all of those things. So I could explain it to you, okay, that you can't do any of these kinds of style experiments unless you do control the aperture of the camera. I guess he meant like green TV screen and old-fashioned. No, I mean like a common understanding that all people who've taken any kind of photographs understand. So I'm sorry you don't understand how cameras work, but that's how they work. All right. Looks black set against the bright regions of the picture. I don't even know if that's a good example, because frankly that's just because the fluorescence doesn't turn off very well. I mean, the problem with the old style TVs was once you made a bright spot, it stayed bright for a long time. It took a while for the fluorescence to de-energize and stop producing photons. So it wasn't very responsive. So I tested that claim too by masking the bright fringes, whatever that means, then doing an A-B comparison with the light that was there when it was a single slit. So he's doing the experiment basically backwards, right? You're supposed to compare the double slit. Now you're taking photons away. You're blocking one of the slits and then looking. You're not doing it the other way around. Moron. And surprise, surprise, one was obviously bright and the other was obviously dark. So he's saying he changed the position of all the photons coming from these two surfaces, and he made them not be in those positions anymore. Not possible. Once more indicating DS talks complete utter rubbish. So again, indicating with really bad reasoning, and I'm sure an incredibly flawed experiment in the sense that you have no hope of acquiring the proper position. This is like somebody measuring, picometers with a yardstick. I mean, it just can't be done that way, retard. Okay, and more importantly, doesn't care that he does. So, well, anyway. So yes, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for them that their lies and bad experiments aren't proof. They find it frustrating that the entire world doesn't sit there and say, let's go look at this Brozo show where he's going to prove there's no conservation of momentum, with his dirty stick that he, swiveled in some cat shit. I mean, you don't, you're a retard, okay? You really are. You really think you're a very good driver. Well, you're really not. Okay. I will have to think whether to publish these types of things just for a change in topic. There really won't be probably any necessity to change the topic because the experiment is so poor that there's no point, okay, in discussing garbage as an experiment. I know that DS will say that's not the subject. No, what I'll say is where is your much talked about exact 1.4 result of the pool ball experiment redone? Yes, where is that? Okay, you said you had it. You'd already done it. It's already in the box, in the ready for shipment deal. You used the ASAP, you used all this rhetoric like you got it. It's coming any second now. Where is it? Okay, even though he did recently say it doesn't matter. Where did I say that? In a video, if the video is off topic, making me out to be bad for not publishing videos debunking his garbage once he moved on to some other nonsense. I haven't moved on to anything. I'm just sitting here, we're all just waiting for you to prove there's no conservation of momentum. So go ahead and prove it, fucker. You keep saying it. You keep saying it has to be true that there's no conservation of momentum. It has to be true. It's got to be the truth. So why don't you show us your proof? God, what a piece of shit. So where is it? Okay, question mark. Well, it's sitting waiting to be published, but published means he's already uploaded it, but he won't publish it. Okay. He won't let us see it. but hopefully alongside a few other related experiments. So there's nothing related. Okay, this is a really simple lever experiment. It proves decisively whether what I've been saying is true or not true. He's going to take a lever and he's going to have the same force and he's going to propel two objects, and somehow the half mass of one will not conserve momentum and it will not go twice as fast. He's going to prove that the outside of the lever does not move at twice the speed of the inside of the lever. The one distance isn't related to the two distance. The lever theory does not work, and there is no conservation of momentum. Those are his overt claims of what he's going to fucking goddamn prove. What's off topic? I mean, what the fuck? All right. Let's see. Hopefully alongside a few other related experiments. Yeah, not interested. So he doesn't have the chance to make more excuses. What excuses? I didn't make any excuses. I said you did a fairly good experiment. You pushed a couple of billiard balls and you basically proved there's conservation of momentum. Okay, you did one rational thing so far on your channel. There's one rationally thought about, well-performed experiment on your entire channel. There's one good fucking experiment. And now you're saying that experiment was a fraud, okay, and you're going to produce the better version. And I claimed when we see this better version, what we're going to see is his deliberate effort to fuck the truth. He's going to deliberately fuck the experiment in some decisive way to force the results to come out to his stupid, moronic lie theory of 1.4 that has nothing to do with what any physicist on Earth actually believes. No physicist has made the 1.4 video. Okay, his whole theory is a pile of shit. Physics doesn't believe that you can fuck momentum. Physics does believe that you have to conserve momentum, and it is that fact that you are proving to be not a fact. So you're too stupid to know what you're actually saying or actually going to prove, and clearly you didn't produce the video, which means you couldn't cheat it enough. You tried to cheat and you couldn't make it happen. And that's why we're not seeing it. It's because you couldn't cheat enough. Okay, because I have done the experiment too. Because I will have done these experiments too, showing he is still wrong. So all I want to see is what you claim to have, which is proof that you can destroy the conservation of momentum, and you can do it with a simple lever experiment. Well, go ahead and show me that, fucker. God, what a lying sack of shit. Let's see, of course that won't matter to him because he's not honest enough. I mean, all the videos are public. I haven't taken any of them down. I've made all my statements in public. Okay. To mention how shockingly easy it is to debunk his excuses. So where have you done that? Where's that fucking experiment? What you debunked was Ryan Gosling's experiment. You clearly debunked it by producing an experiment where you conserved the momentum. Within 10%, you conserved the momentum. He didn't. Shit. For example, the one where he had... So here, this is, he's just so... Let's just completely change the subject. I mean, what a lying sack of shit he is. For example, the one where he had the hallelujah moment and claimed when he realized it apparently makes a big difference whether the launch spring is attached to the wall or the object being pushed off the wall. Well, none of that hallelujah crap or any of that shit happened, okay? So that's all his distortion of reality. I just pointed out that it does, you could just say from intuition, it makes a difference whether the object does move or doesn't move. Whether you're pushing against a movable object. I mean, if I'm pushing on something and the thing I'm pushing on yields, I won't be able to get as much energy into my push. I mean, just a sort of a fact. Okay, if both objects move, then the object moves at half the velocity. All right. He was so proud that it only took him 5 minutes to come up with a nonsense reason. I've got those... I don't know what that is. Those perfect. Okay, those perfect should be 2 words. 1.4 results in my 1 mass, 2 mass cart launching velocity experiments. Okay, and let's just point out when he did something as simple as an experiment this simple. You have something going twice as fast, you have something going half the speed, and you just push them into a spring. You just let them hit a spring. And what results did he get? 1.4. And what were the predictions of the two theories, momentum and kinetic energy? 12 and 16. So somehow he proved there's no momentum conservation and there's no kinetic energy conservation in one experiment. Yeah. So whenever he says he did something in an experiment, you have to have it in that context, that this is the same lying asshole who said he proved, okay, that, something about kinetic energy when he got a 14 answer and the only two right choices could be 12 and 16. All right. Let's see. I did it both ways and got virtually the same results. Something like 1.4 in one case, 1.4, 1.1. Yeah. And you got the other results in your other simple experiment where all you have to do is let two things hit a spring, and you got a completely erroneous, insanely off, wrong answer. Okay. Up where he put the spring on the wall and instead of the objects. So again, he's talking about his experiments in text, which isn't very effective. I can't remember what his excuse was after that, but part of my excuse is that you don't know what a quick release is, apparently, and you still don't know what they are, even though we've talked about them over and over again, even though every other experimentalist uses them. You just keep saying, I don't need no quick release. All right. But his excuses are really worth listening to anyway. Everyone knows that. He's just entertaining him tap dance his way out of being shown to be wrong. So again, I don't need to tap dance out of the credibility of an experimentalist who claims he proved kinetic energy with an experiment where he got an answer that's clearly wrong. Okay. Yet again and again and again. Yes, you're the one who keeps lying that you prove something when your evidence is absolutely the opposite of a proof. It just shows that you have no credibility and that your kind will lie about everything all the time. Just like all the other scientists who say they've proven light is a wave or proven some other pile of shit. His fans think the opposite because he never occurs to them to listen to the other side of an unprejudiced mind. So here I am reading to my audience your opportunity to make your brilliant counter argument. And do you make a brilliant counter argument to a single thing said in my videos? Why don't you take the first half hour of the video I made 2 days ago, okay, where I'm just explaining experiments again, explaining the outcomes, just saying, well, what do you think when it says 9.8 meters per second? What do you think that means? Per foot? So even though it says 9.8 meters per second, you think it means 9.8 meters per foot. Okay. That you're getting 9.8 meters of energy per every foot you travel. Even though it says per second, you think it's per foot. And you're going to prove it. Yeah, okay. They cannot take the risk of exposing themselves to any argument. So again, this is just hilarious. I am looking for your argument. There's no arguments in your video. You don't do any theory, ever. You never explain to me what you believe. Do you believe in conservation of momentum? Will you answer the question somewhere? For 2 years, I got to ask you, do you believe in conservation of momentum? Will you answer the question? You won't even answer the question for my audience. You won't do my audience the favor of just answering the simple question, are you a flat earther? I'm basically just asking you, do you believe in the conservation of momentum? Well, then your experiment should show that belief. Okay, but his and things they can twist, mangle, and finagle. Yeah, you're the one finagling, clearly, to make it sound like someone said something very different to what they actually did say. It's not just about what you say in the sense of the overt language. You just have to take responsibility for it. When Professor Lewin says it accelerates at twice the acceleration, and you say, well, twice the acceleration happens in half the time, and therefore it's no acceleration, and you meant that you thought and you think Professor Lewin actually meant to say there's no acceleration. So when he said there was twice the acceleration, he didn't mean twice the acceleration, he meant zero acceleration. because twice the acceleration in half the time, well, that equals nothing. And you think he meant to say that. Who's the one twisting and finagling and cheating the goddamn truth? You fucking piece of shit. Alright, leads right back to the comment on the very issue. So there's no leading back to anything here. Alright. So now we have the mindless marbles. Well, we'll see if there's any commenters first. Not much. As is too typical, frankly. That won't help me. I need... Where the fuck is it? Ah, there it is. Let's see. People want to argue hitting a pull ball with a cue stick is the results of potentially energy, then KE, but wouldn't it be momentum? Well, clearly that's the NASA argument. Of course, it's all Newton's cradles on, the pool table, and there's really no room for the creation of energy. So, but the catch is that you have to watch what's going on kind of carefully, and the fact is that all the balls weigh the same. So it's easy to lie, because when they all weigh the same, you're not going to see the difference between kinetic energy and momentum. Momentum works when you change the masses. Kinetic energy doesn't. So when you hit big things into little things, that's when you either lose a ton of energy for no reason, or you make free energy in kinetic energy. So you need an example that doesn't have everything with the same mass. Oh no, hopefully it's not another joke video by Mindless Marbles. I don't know. There's a joke video by Mindless. Someone put up a video? I don't think so. He doesn't do anything. Alright. I hear about you getting caught up in another project. Things are similar on my end. Let me just see how much, alright, we'll move. Oh, you didn't see the other stuff? Well, maybe you didn't. I don't remember now. Well, it doesn't really matter. You're not missing anything. You're not missing much anyway. Yeah, I gotta turn this on. Alright, and so we'll read some of this. Let's see how far we have to go down. Alright, you can see some of it, but not all of it. Because again, it's just rude. I mean, they, again, they always have to use these, invade your personal life tactics. They can't just stick to the subject. Because, yeah, they don't have an argument. And they're petty and shitty. Let's see, how else can I do this so I can actually read it? Oh, okay, I'll do it this way. Yeah, that's the way I'll do it. I'll do this. I mean, it's a lot of antics I have to go through for no good reason, just to go through a comment, but whatever. That's the way they make the world. Alright, I hear about you getting caught up on another project. Things are similar here. I try not to let DS soak my time up, but it gets difficult sometimes. I hope your endeavors go well. So, again, you're making assertions, okay, that somehow I have misrepresented Professor Lewin, but you won't show any misrepresentation, and you certainly won't show any other Professor Lewin clips that demonstrate he believes otherwise. So why don't you just show those? Alright, the point of the experiment was to simply repeat the test you said you'd done. So now they're claiming that each other is the one who did the experiment first, and they can't even figure that part out. Blocking one slit and obscuring light to places that it didn't as a two slit. So it goes to more places when it's a single slit. That's what we're looking for. Light is hitting more locations when it's a single slit, or different locations. I'm glad my words aren't going to complete waste. I appreciate that at least someone read them. Well, I'm sure I responded to them with the same argument I just used, which is, you think you're going to do that test with your crayons. Okay, you got to do the test with something better than crayons. So I tested that claim by masking the bright fringes by doing a A-B comparison with a light that was there when it was a single slit. So now he's even got a light in the room. So he's adding more ambient light to make the experiment even more harder to do. So that makes no sense. And so surprise, surprise, One was obviously bright and the other was obviously dark. So again, he doesn't know what a camera aperture is. He really doesn't know what exposure is, so no hope that he's going to do this experiment correctly. Once more indicating DS talks complete and utter rubbish, and more importantly doesn't care that he does. So no, once more just demonstrates you don't know anything about the technical requirements of doing the experiment. You don't know what a quick release is, you don't understand the concept, you don't know what pressure is, you don't know what voltage is, you don't know what amperage is, you don't know what wattage is. You are showing yourself to be the fucking goddamn imbecile. You said it had more energy because it made more voltage. You did that. You did an experiment where you measured the voltage, okay, going through a wire, and then claimed that was a measure of its total energy. So this is another one of his lies. The guy was a fucking goddamn Sparky, and he won't even admit, well, that's misrepresenting the fact. Yes, of course I misrepresented the fact. I claimed I was measuring the total amount of energy when all I measured was voltage. Okay. I had this idea as well, although I never executed it because I didn't know how I would set it up. The idea seems easy, but setting it up would be laborious, I would imagine. Well, I don't know exactly how you precisely block one of the slits in these tiny slit experiments. So yeah, that's such a delicate process, because introducing more matter is just introducing the possibility that you're going to create more diffraction of something. But let's just say you can do it. Filming it is another tricky task. So then he does this, he's responding to this, his fans think. I mean, really, where is there any evidence my fans do anything much in terms of thinking? So, I mean, this it's just such a funny argument. But anyway, so once in a while somebody comments to them, I guess, and says something contrary, like, well, you never answered the question. Do you believe in conservation of momentum or don't you? And so once in a while, I guess they do that, and they think that's harassment. Okay. It's really weird. Some of them, not all, have no whatever curiosity whatsoever, except to just continue to glorify, and then he uses, what he shouldn't be doing, which is using my name, which is just so fucking rude. I mean, why would they do that, right? It's just more evidence that isn't that just showing how desperate they are? They can't win the argument, so they have to in some way, steal pieces of my life. They have to try to make me pay for it in some way. I'm not allowed to talk on the internet. I'm not allowed to disagree with them. It's just, who does that? Cheaters. That's who do it. Cheaters. All right. You're most welcome. So he says, just what an asshole. So why don't you argue to mindless matters? Why aren't you using your real name? I mean, why are you doing this coward thing where you use somebody else's real name but they can't use your real name? Why don't you force him to out himself? Okay. Anyway, I'm glad YouTube let us exchange comments without the hitch for a change. Just to clarify what I meant by masking off the bright fringes. Well, this ought to be funny. I photographed the image and used masks to ensure they remained aligned exactly on top of one another. Who knows what that means? So I could easily mask off the bright fringes in the two-slit photograph. Using Bandicam, I'm sure there are many kinds of software that can do this, though. So he superimposed the two images on each other or something, just drawing solid blocks to expose only the dark regions. I don't know what that means. Obviously, I had to block off more of the bright fringes to leave perhaps only half the dark fringes, because they fade into one another. Yeah? And so how'd you fix that? Oh, I don't know. All I had to do was then flip back and forth between the images and the equivalent exposed area of the single slit envelope pattern, which was obviously going to be bright. I have no idea why it was even necessary to go through this, just to show that it was obvious all along. So he's saying it's obvious. Okay. Clearly not obvious. That the dark regions don't only appear dark by comparison to the much brighter fringes on either side. I don't know. It's not as if cameras have any difficulty recording the supposedly less bright areas. Yeah, they actually do. Okay, so unless you have a camera specifically designed to allow you to control the exposure, the camera changes the exposure. All right. If they existed as DS claims, otherwise cameras would take pretty awful photographs if they could not discern the different levels of brightness. Exactly. But they discern it and change the exposure of the camera, retard. And we are not talking about a camera which is flooded with light so bright it cannot function correctly. It functions exactly as if all the time. It meters the light, and it changes the level of exposure to have a constant contrast in the photograph. So again, you don't understand even how cameras work. These are very low levels of light in reality, requiring me to turn the room light off to capture the best images. I only clarify this in case you thought I had some genius system. So obviously it's not a genius system, it's a dumb motherfucking system. I'm a very good photographer system. It's another retard saying I know what I'm doing. For masking the bright fringes in situ, so to speak. I have no idea how to achieve that, because the bright fringes light would then just fall off the mask itself. I don't know what he's talking about. I better go and respond to silly question from one of the empty heads now. What question? Why the air track experiment creates extra momentum. In fact, I might not bother. Well, you might not, because your air track experiments are all over the place likewise. So he did 2 air track experiments, right? So he's doing this Professor Lewin experiment where obviously Professor Lewin used uneven massed carts. He changed the weights of the carts to fake the experiment. And so Brozo had to fake it. And so he did it in 2 ways, right? He does it with springs, and then he does it without springs. And somehow, magically, it doesn't work unless the springs are there, when it's hard aluminum. So theoretically, the carts are perfectly elastic on the air track without springs. And the experiment should work just fine without springs. There's no theory to defend why the experiment wouldn't work without springs, because it's hard metal. Anyway, people think we got nothing better to do than explain something they don't want to hear anyway. Glad I understood you correctly. It was useful because it stopped me from thinking I was a genius for coming up with a viable alternative explanation. Catch you later. So we'll see if we ever see this fucking shit video. Okay, and it will be a steaming pile of shit. His photographs of the double slit experiment. Alright. So I think that's it. So we don't have anything more from Ian Gosling explaining his theory of conservation of momentum. So he says he's proven there isn't any conservation of momentum. We can tell all the physicists to stop talking about it because it doesn't have to happen. You don't have to conserve the momentum. The great Gosling can destroy it anytime he wants, and so can the mindless, and so can the stupid Brozo. Okay. And that's their theory. So they're really arguing with conventional physics. They're telling conventional physics that there is, their notion that they have to conserve momentum is a big fat lie, and you don't have to play that. Okay. And when Professor Lewin says twice the acceleration, he doesn't mean twice the acceleration. He means 0 acceleration, because twice the acceleration happens in half the time, and therefore there is no acceleration. That's their brilliant counter-argument. Boy, seems decisive to me. I can't see how Professor Lewin's going to survive the shredding. They have just shredded his theory. Just shredded it. There's no hope that Professor Lewin will be able to hold his head up high ever again, because he's just been proven to be such a stupid dupe to believe in conservation of momentum. What a dumbass. Alright. Satire, if you didn't catch it. Being satirical. Alright, let's see. I find it most disgusting. Instead of admitting they don't have an argument, they need to dox you. That's so cowardly. Yeah, I mean, all the games played are just cowardly games, but, you know, I mean, when they have to keep stooping to these invasions of my privacy, and, you know, it's just like, who does that? Who resorts to throwing the A-bomb? You don't use nuclear weapons if you have a really cool army that can actually get the job done, all right? So they obviously don't have a cool argument. They don't have a great army of great ideas and thoughts, and you know, so they have to use desperately weak tactics. And as I pointed out before, it matters not to me. So what they're really doing is trying to get to my landlord or something. You know, they're trying to get to a periphery victim. So it's like if I had kids, they'd probably pick on my kids, you know, and they'd force me to get off the internet because it made one of my kids cry. You know, if they can make one of my kids cry, you know, then they can get me off the internet. That's all they're doing. Cheap, petty, silly, sick maneuver. I mean, just demonstrates just how weak these people are. Alright, let's see. Nothing there to give a shit about. So unfortunately, everybody's full of shit. Nothing there. I already did that comment. Alright, so I don't have anything. Yeah, so if you people don't show up with something, then I guess I'll have to get the fuck out of here. Even though it's raining out. I'll go out. Yeah, do something in the rain. Anyway, 11 viewers. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I mean, it's 9:30 in the morning. Should be able to do a little better than 11, but too bad. Yeah. That's all there is for now. Somebody did, you know, there's some stupid debate channel on YouTube, some whatever, where frankly, they all seem like assholes to me. But anyway, I mean, if they can generate a debate or find somebody for me to debate, then what the hell, I'll go for it, even though I don't need, you know, somebody to format the debate for me. I know how to turn my camera on, you know, and post a video. But anyway, we'll see if anything comes of it. I mean, it's not a physics audience, so that's the downside. You know, a debate site that debates, you know, whatever, whether frogs are better than turtles, you know, that audience isn't going to do this channel any good. But, you know, it might, you know, you might be able to cause a noise that creates a counter argument somewhere else in the medium. I mean, it's like playing that dielectric video where he's pretty much insulting Sabina Hassenfelder pretty hard, and you know, we'll see. I mean, you know, if there's no reaction, it's like, well, what does it take, really? I mean, he just basically said you're full of shit. Are you going to answer his claim? I mean, it'd be really great if the internet turned back to what it used to be, you know, the YouTube net, part of it anyway, where people actually did listen to each other's videos and they actually did respond to the arguments made. I mean, those kind of were the good old days where people could make a video and then somebody like a little weak moron like a Piro even could make a counter argument, you know, and then you could destroy the Piro, of course, with the better argument, and then the Piro would eventually disappear and go, you know, sit in the mud puddle he calls a golden pond that he lives on. But whatever. It's probably still frozen. Maine. Maine. Maine is a nice place for 3 weeks out of the year. And the rest of the year it sucks. It's just dismal. Gray and cold and blah. Alright, so my only commenter has now left the building. So, boy, it looks like we're fucked. But it's okay. It's an hour and a half almost. There's Tim. Yay, Timmy. Timmy! You know, this is not on topic, but gravity is a regular topic, so I have a question. Well, it's sort of on topic. I mean, it did come up in the beginning of this video. What are your thoughts on the aberration? Oh, see, that's just pointless. My thought is it's a silly argument of gravity, and if you agree, it's true. No, gravity has nothing to do with two bodies interacting with each other, sending back and forth messages or any kind of crap like that. Gravity, the Earth is always making gravity. It doesn't matter where you put the Earth, it makes exactly the same gravity. Okay, the field, the effect. And so there's absolutely nothing that gets in any way messy in terms of something moving. So if I'm in orbit around something, it doesn't matter where I am in orbit. There's already gravity where I'm going. Earth is making gravity in all the locations already. It's already there. It doesn't have to wait for me to show up. And now I turned on the Earth's gravity. No, you don't turn it on. It's already on. It's already making it. So no matter where I go, I'm going to be in some kind of gravity. It's like a photon. I'm just saying it's just like photons in reverse. So if you think of the sun and now just analogize gravity as being exactly the opposite. So instead of little bits of shit flying out and hitting you, it's little bits of shit that will pull you, to use that analogy. Or better yet, it's, again, the paint analogy or something coming from the outside. I can't give you an analogy for gravity in the sense of using the energy up, because there is no analogy for that. There's no other mechanism that does what gravity does. That's why gravity is sort of unique. But I mean, if you thought a photon coming at you caused you to move towards, then you can understand. So just think of the Earth as like the sun, and it's emitting these photons that have this effect of like a tractor beam. Then there's no aberration, because there's no way you could ever change the amount of gravity you're in, because it's just about the explicit distance. How far are you from the body emitting the photons? And it tells you how many photons will hit you. So no matter where I go from the sun, a certain number of photons are going to hit that square centimeter of space. That's, it's the position that dictates what hits you. You don't have to be there. Okay. What are your thoughts on, gravity? And if you agree it is true, how does your theory explain it? Like I said, it's obviously, there's no, I'm escaping the gravity because I moved, and the sun doesn't know I moved. The sun doesn't need to know I moved. The photons are already there. It's a simple answer, right? I mean, that's just so obvious. My understanding of aberration is the following. The sun has a velocity, and when gravity acts on any object due to the sun, the object is pulled towards the instantaneous position of the sun. Well, again, you're just making some sort of argument that the positions from the sun, the light, if you just convert it into light, you're just saying, what's it matter whether the sun is moving or not moving? The light from the sun is always going to be a certain amount at a certain distance. I can't change how many photons are going to hit my hand. If the sun's moving and I'm moving, the number of photons is always going to be the same. If I get closer to the sun because it moves more than I move towards me, then I'm going to get hit by more photons. So it's just about the explicit distance between you and the object producing the effect. Gravity is exactly the same. It's the same inverse square law. The light photons do exactly the same inverse square law. It's the same law. It's this law right here. It's this law. It's the same law. 4 times half the distance. Light does exactly the same thing as gravity. I don't know. You're asking me to say the same thing all over again. My understanding of aberration is the following. The sun has a velocity. Well, how could it be relevant? And when gravity acts on any object due to the sun, the object is pulled towards the instantaneous position of the sun. Of course, but we're moving the same speed the sun is. I don't know what you're talking about. The sun isn't moving relative to us. All right. As opposed to gravity pulling the object towards the sun, retarded position. So again, you're thinking that the goddamn fucking gravity isn't. I just told you, think about it as photons. Would it be possible for you to move through space, and you're both moving through space at a pretty slow speed, frankly, and that somehow you could change how much light is hitting you? You can't. I'm moving on the surface of the earth right now. The light bulb is producing light. It's a certain number of photons hitting my hand from the light. That's it. I get closer, more photons hit. I get further away, less photons hit. I go sideways, I get the same number of photons. You're pretty thick sometimes, I gotta say. I mean, I've said it 4 different ways, 5 different ways, and you just keep doing it. As opposed to gravity pulling an object towards the sun. I mean, again, there's no pulling in the whole thing anyway, but I'm just saying, even if we accept it's pulling like a photon in reverse. There's a certain set amount of gravitational impact being created. The other object doesn't have to exist. There could be no planets in the solar system, no moons, no asteroids, and the sun would be creating exactly the same gravity. The sun doesn't care whether the other object exists or not. It's making gravity in all those places regardless. Just like the light doesn't need to fall on any planet, the gravity doesn't need to hit any planet. Fuck. Alright, I still have time, but someone wanted asking you about this. What? I still have time, but I don't know what that means. Someone wanted asking you about this. If a mass and speed played an equal role in energy, then a bullet with mass equal 4 grams traveling 300 meters. Why do I do these complex things? 4 and 300? You couldn't make it like 1 and 200? Would have same energy as a bullet with mass 8 and 100. Yes, I'm just saying, of course they have the same energy. That's exactly the point. The lever says so, everything says so, except, and they just claim the faster bullet, the lighter bullet has more energy. Well, where did you figure that out from? The gun, the recoil of the gun, they say it has 2 joules of energy. The bullet has 2,000. The fact is, no, the 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour has exactly the same ability to change the universe as the 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour. That's how the real universe works. That's how thrust on a rocket ship works. That's how you land on the moon. Okay, you land on the moon by understanding the bullet, even though it looks like it has more energy, has exactly the same energy as the gun's recoil. You land on the moon when you understand that. You don't land on the moon when you fuck it up. Okay, anyway. So, Tim, back to the other subject. I don't see what connection you are making between aberration, which, I don't know, why don't you define your aberration? Aberration basically means that somehow you can escape the gravity. That I can move sideways fast enough and somehow the sun doesn't know I moved. You can't do that. And the inverse square law. I'm pointing out to you that the force exists just like light. You cannot make it go away. You can't make it change because you show up. Because you show up and say, I'm here, somehow the light changes. No, the light is the same. The only thing you can change is whether you're shining any light back at the sun. That's all that changes. But you can't change what the sun produced. Oh, man, you really are thick. Anyway, between aberration and the inverse square law, I don't see they have anything to do with each other. Then you're not getting that what they have to do with each other is the fact that any particle, any substantive force that would be emitted by anything, okay, that's spherical, and is producing a constant something, and obviously gravity is constant, that it would have to obey the inverse square law. So I'm just giving you a reason why gravity is just like photons, because it does exactly what photons do. It obeys exactly the same fucking law that a photon obeys. And that it's already there, fuckhead. Gravity is already right over there. Even though there's nothing, no matter could be right over there, there's still gravity right over there. exactly the same gravity I'm in now. If I jump over there instantaneously, because I have special instantaneous shoes, and I instantaneously change my position, I'll be in exactly the same amount of gravity. Exactly the same amount of sun gravity will affect me. Oh, shit. Boy, you people. Oh. Even the people who agree with me annoy the fuck out of me. I pointed out that due to kinetic KE formula, the 4 gram mass would be going twice the energy. It's not going twice the energy, obviously, because energy is the mass and the velocity, not just the velocity. I mean, I didn't do the math. I'm just assuming you did the math correctly. Yes, one thing goes much slower, one thing goes much faster. The lighter thing goes much faster, the slower thing goes much slower. I mean, the heavier thing goes much slower, but it's the same thing as 1,000 people with $1 versus one person with $1,000. It's the same fucking amount of money. Alright, so let's see if there's some other way. I mean, the analogy of light, I can't think of a better analogy. So if you just thought of gravity as being anti-photons, that is, they did the opposite, they pulled you towards something. And every body that has gravity, every material object is emitting this force. This absence of force is what it really is. But let's just say it was a force. That means the absence of force. You can just understand it. How can I possibly change what the force is producing? How do I change what the light bulb is producing by moving closer or moving further away? I'm never changing what the light bulb produces. I can just change what I'm going to get hit by. If I stay the same distance from the light bulb, I'm going to get hit with the same number of photons. It's not going to change. I stand still, I move around in orbit, same gravity is going to affect me. And again, I don't know whether it's twice the energy in that analogy. Let's see, 300 meters per second to 150 meters per second. Yeah, so you doubled the mass and cut the velocity in half. So that would be, yes, their theory says it's 4 times the energy. No, twice. That's right, twice. When it's exactly the same momentum. I mean, that's all you have to say. It's the same momentum. How can things with the same momentums have different energies? How could that make any sense to anybody? Momentum is what you give to things when you hit them. How could they have different amounts of energy when they have to give the energy through momentum? It just has to do with the fact that you have real advantage in breaking some chemistry if you take advantage of the fact that it can't absorb the energy at any speed. You have to give it the energy slowly. If you give the energy to it too fast, you melt it, you break it, and you crack it. And so, yeah, that looks like more energy, but it's not more energy. It's just that you imposed it faster than the atoms could absorb it. Okay. So I guess you've run out of steam there, 2 commenters. So anyway, I guess I'll title off. So 30-second warning. I'll give you 30 seconds. Oops, there we go. One quick. Okay, good. Doesn't have to be quick. But go ahead. Formulate your question. Bing, 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 ding, ding, ding. This is a quote from Stephen Carlin's 1999 paper, Aberration and the Speed of Gravity. Well, just because it's whoever this guy you say, a 1999 paper, how is this supposed to be, to me, compelling? But anyway, fine. It is well known that if a charged source moves at a constant velocity, the electric field experienced by a test particle points towards the source's instantaneous position rather than its... Well, that's just nonsense, frankly. Okay. So, I mean, it doesn't have... There's absolutely no reason to think it does do that. That it changes its exposure to a common charge. So, that's not well known by anybody. All right, let's just read that again. The electric field experienced by a test particle points towards the source's instantaneous position rather than its retarded position. So this is not in any way a proof of anything. So he's basically saying if I sent an electron towards a charged positive or negative, that somehow it doesn't go straight. Of course it does. All right. So this is hardly a gravity argument, frankly. But anyway, this effect does not mean that the electric field propagates instantaneously. Yes, the field always exists. Charges are just like gravity in the sense that the charge is always producing charge. It doesn't care whether the electron is there or not there. It produces a charge. So if something has a charge, it has a charge, whether there's electrons around it or not. The trick is, if there is other stuff around it, then the other stuff is eventually going to start affecting the original source, and the fact that it's going to start pushing back with a substantial mass also. Rather, the field of the moving charge has a velocity-dependent component, okay, that cancels the effect of propagation delay. So there's no propagation delay, and there is no fucking velocity-dependent component that tells the other thing. So he's basically saying there's no aberration because magically the electron moving towards the charged ball of fluff somehow tells the ball of fluff, it's okay, you can make less charge or something. That doesn't happen. And again, we're talking about pushing and pulling, so I guess I should use a positive charge, and you're letting the electron fall into it. Obviously, it's going to keep falling into stronger and stronger potential as it gets closer and closer, but I don't even know where there's any evidence that there's any kind of aberration. So, to first order, propagation delays means delays in the speed of light. We're talking about things that have to be moving the speed of light, so I don't even understand the context of this. Okay. And there's no way propagation delay means delayed by the speed of light. What does that even mean? Propagation delay means delayed by the speed of light. Obviously, the force is communicating between an electron. Yes, okay, so understand. The electron is producing also its own repulsive energy. And it's a reflected energy, so it's trapped. No energy is going to get trapped in the analogy of gravity. Just like in the light bulb example, the amount of light reflecting off my hand is so tiny by comparison to the light bulb itself, that the amount of light that reflects off my hand goes back into the light bulb and then comes back out of the light bulb is so tiny that it can't have anything to do with this conversation. Obviously, it would be huge between an electron and proton. Those are equal masses. So the two bodies are interacting in a completely different way. We're talking about a huge bias, the Earth and the Sun. Gigantic, mass to velocity to distance ratio. I mean, gigantic distance ratio. So we're talking about a tiny bit of energy that actually bounces back and hits the sun again. And then the sun readmits it. Oh, it's just terrible. Okay, so anyway, propagation delay. All right, the gravity takes time to get to the object it's pulling on. So this is a lie. I'm just letting you know, it's just a lie, okay? It's just like the light bulb. It'd be stupid for you to say the photons are delayed getting to me until they know I'm here. Because that effect only happens when you introduce the object. Obviously, a charged object is already radiating. So it's already, like I said, if I made the sun and a sun, obviously the gravitational pull of both of them is so intense, right? So it's a shared thing. It's not a shared thing between you and the Earth. The Earth is gigantic and you are tiny. So you have no effect in changing what the Earth is emitting. You can't throw light at it and it reflects it back at you, and that's significant. It's not going to be significant at all. It's irrelevant. So there's no aberration unless you're talking about two objects that are of equal intensity or something approaching an equal intensity. All right. Oh, so that's just you're really stretching the argument to compare it to charge. All right, you seem to recognize that to get something to fall at twice the speed, you have to drop it from, what the fuck, I seem to recognize. I've been saying that solid for 6 months really hard. I've been pushing it so fucking hard. I mean, fuck you. Do you also recognize it takes 4 times more fuel to lift an object 4 times the height? No, I don't acknowledge that. It takes 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast? No, I, of course, don't acknowledge that. Show me one fucking experiment demonstrating that to be true. Show one fucking experiment. Twice the velocity gets you 4 times the height. You show me one fucking experiment where it takes 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. Show me that experiment. All right. That seems to me to be an example of taking 4 times the fuel to go twice the speed. What is an example? Show me a physical experiment demonstrating it ever takes 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. Show one fucking experiment taking place on planet Earth that demonstrates 4 times the fuel to move something twice as fast. All right. So then back to Tim's gravity crap. All right. Photons have to travel through space. It takes 8 minutes for the photon. So what? There's photons ahead of the photon. There's photons behind the photon. So what? We're talking about the rate at which the photons are hitting you. Who cares how long it takes them to get there? Their rate isn't changed by how long it takes to get to you. Oh, fuck. It takes 8 minutes for the photons to travel from the sun to the Earth. So what? The number of photons hitting you will not change. You showing up does not change how many fucking photons the fucking sun produces. How many fucking photons the sun produces is not changed by you saying, hello, sun, and then hiding from the sun, and then, hi, hello, sun. The sun doesn't change how many photons it creates because you hide behind a rock. Oh, fuck. Who said anything about changing the photons? You're implying that somehow the fact that it takes 8 minutes for the photons, that the train takes 8 minutes to get to me. So what? There's train after train after train after train. If the train has an infinite number of cars, who cares how long it takes for the cars to actually get from the station to me? They're hitting me one every second. Bang, 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 bang. Who cares how long it took them to get where they are? Who said anything about changing the photons the sun is emitting? You're implying it by saying they're 8 minutes away. So what? That was nothing to do with my understanding. Well, I can't make any sense out of what your understanding is. Who cares? Somebody shoots a gun, okay? They're just sitting there in their yard shooting the gun. Every fucking second, they bang, 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 shooting bullets. Every day, 24 hours a day, 24/7. I go outside my door, and I get hit by a bullet. Does it fucking goddamn matter when he shot it? We know the bullets are going to be into space. We know they're already there. Doesn't matter where I walk, I'm going to get hit by a bullet. Because they're coming at a constant rate. Fuck. The light doesn't change at all. Like I said, I walk into the room, the light bulb doesn't say, hey, fuck, there's somebody in the room, I've got to change. That's not what the light bulb's doing. And it's not what gravity is doing. It's not waiting for you to show up. That's all this argument you're making is about. Is whether or not the sun cares whether you are there to see its gravity. It doesn't care. It changes nothing when you show up. The only way you showing up could matter is if you're as big as the sun and there's some possibility that you'll start reflecting energy back and forth. Otherwise, you don't make any goddamn difference. All right. You don't think it takes 4 times the fuel to climb 4 stories than to climb 1. That's not an argument about the total fuel under the circumstances of the experiment, which is opposing a time-dependent force. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second. It takes 2 seconds to go 4 times the distance, takes only twice the amount of time. If you're only in the gravity twice the time and it's a 9.8 meters per second force, how the fuck could it take 4 times more energy? If you're only opposing 2 units of times of gravity, how could it be 4 units of energy? Dumbass. We're not talking about climbing a building. We're talking about being launched into gravity. We're talking about free falling, not free falling. If you don't free fall for 4 times the height, you won't go twice as fast. You have to free fall for the whole 2 units of time it takes from 4 times the height. 4 times the height, only twice the amount of time being pushed in the gravity. Fuckhead. Let's see. I don't think it takes 4 times the fuel to go from 30 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. I don't think it takes 4 times the fuel to push a bowling ball, an 8-pound ball, twice the speed. Yeah, so use a real example. All right. Imagine the rubber sheet analogy. No. I mean, I've already pointed out what's the point of doing that stupid 2-dimensional analogy for gravity when it doesn't work in any respect, frankly. It cheats the argument grotesquely. But anyway, if the bowling ball is moving on the sheet, it takes time for the curvature of the fabric to propagate, correct? No. It's irrelevant, really, frankly. The fabric is very yielding. It will instantaneously create the bending and the denting. There will be no delay, and all of that is horseshit, okay? The amount of friction created by the fabric is so minute and tiny, it couldn't possibly really affect anything. The only thing it does affect is the energy you put in is getting absorbed by the bending of the fabric, and so the object loses energy and therefore gets into orbits. So in real gravity, if you really did the 2-dimensional experiment without any friction, okay, you could drop marbles in and they either crash right in, okay, to the middle, or they fly back out. And that's all that would happen. They would never go into circles. So it's only because of the friction of the fabric that they actually start circling the well. They won't circle the well. If you throw them in with a little tiny bit of energy, just even drop them in, okay, they'll fly right back out or they'll crash into the hole. Those are the only 2 outcomes, unless they hit each other. The marbles have to hit each other. The marbles don't hit each other. They just go in and fly back out, or they go in the hole. So I'm just saying there's lots of that model that's broken. So what's the point of it? I don't know why you think that gravity is a 2-object thing. It doesn't need the second object. It's irrelevant. Everything has gravity without any second object being in space. Every material object is creating a gravitational field. It doesn't need to have anything around it at all. All right, I'm talking, I'm not talking about energy. Well, fuck you then. It gets when I drop it. It's the same energy. That's a Galilean truth, okay? So it's just the fact that gravity is storage, essentially. You're just saying that whether I drop it or whether I shoot against it, when I'm fighting it, it's exactly the same as when I'm getting it. It gives me exactly what it takes. So that's why that's an important thing to recognize. Okay, I'm talking about the energy I expend getting it up to a height to drop it from. And the argument is you can do it inefficiently or efficiently. I can lift this really stupid. I can do it the hard way, and I can lift it really slowly, blah, 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 blah. And I can burn 100 calories. Or I can lift it really quickly and burn 3. Your choice. Do it the hard way or do it the easy way. The fact that you can make your project infinitely hard to do and make it an infinite amount of energy you'll use because you took an infinite amount of time to do it. The more time you're fighting the gravity, time dependent, again, 9.8 meters per second. How many times do I have to say it? How many times do I have to emphasize it? Do I actually have to turn it into an anal plug and shove it up your ass before you will concede? It's per second, shithead. Per fucking goddamn second. If you take 3 hours to climb the building, you'll burn a hell of a lot more calories than if you take 10 minutes to climb the building. Fuckhead. Okay. Jesus. Oh, God, I hate you people. Anyway, let's see. I'm not talking about... Okay. I'm lifting the weight up 4 times compared to 1 meter. 4 meters compared to 1 meter. And again, you could argue it, if you do it slowly, it's just about how much time you're fighting the gravity. If you can lift it really quick, you'll lift with a lot less energy. I'm carrying it. I get it up to a height and I drop it. It takes 4 times. So you're saying it's not about dropping, it's not about free falling, and here you are comparing free falling to slowly lifting and saying it's the same energy. Slowly lifting is the same thing as dropping and free falling. No, it isn't, retard. Okay, it takes 4 times as much effort to get it to the 4 meter height. It only takes 4 times more effort if you're 4 times slower in doing it. If you do it at exactly the same free fall speed, it'll take exactly the same energy. Okay, then the 1 meter height. So if you lift it at exactly the same speed at which it hits the ground when it falls, you'll use exactly the same amount of energy. All right. The acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second. No, it isn't per second per second. That's silly. Okay, so you want to be a retard? You want to prove you're a moron and an idiot? Nobody says I went 60 miles an hour per hour to the store. No, I went 60 miles an hour. That already says it. You can't go per hour. You can't go per second per second. It's all baby talk. There's no fucking such thing. Every rate can always be, you did it for 6 hours, you did it for 2 hours, you did it for 10 hours, you did it for 500 hours. It's never squared. That's just absolute nonsense. So go ahead, prove you're an idiot. All right. It's 9 meters per second. Meters per second is the speed, not the acceleration. So again, more baby talk. That's just baby talk. Complete asshole moron fall for this shit. Okay, if you think saying per second makes sense, then you're a fucking idiot. If you think it's smart to sit there and say, well, per second, that is per second, maybe for 10 seconds, means I square how many seconds it was, that even makes you even stupider. Why would 10 squared be the same as 6 times 8? They're not the same thing. Okay. Lift it whatever speed you like. That's the whole point. The velocity decides how fast you go through the gravity. Again, 9.8 meters per second. You still can't figure it out that it's just about how long you're fighting the gravity? It takes 4 times longer to go 4 times higher. That's the lie. It takes exactly 2 times longer to go 4 times higher. I double the velocity of something at liftoff. It goes 4 times higher. Shit for brain. 25 miles an hour. I lift something off 25 miles an hour. It goes this high. I lift something off at 50 miles an hour. It goes this high. Okay, it goes 4 times higher. 4 times higher. Twice the speed. Fuckhead. It doesn't matter, of course. It doesn't matter. Obviously, you accelerated to get off the ground, you dumbass. So the acceleration is built into your velocity, you fucking retard. You're going to be decelerating when you're fighting gravity, asshole. It's not about your acceleration. It's about your deceleration. And you're going to decelerate at exactly the same 1:3:5:7 ratio that Galileo figured out. You're too stupid to even understand Galilean physics, you fucking idiot. Okay. Gravity makes you accelerate 9.8 meters per second. No, it makes you move, okay? It gives you a velocity of 9.8 meters per second. It gives you a velocity, an added velocity. If you're going 0 miles an hour, you'll be going 9.8 meters. You'll have traveled 4.9 meters, and you will be going 9.8 meters per second as a velocity. Not an acceleration. Your final velocity will be 9.8 meters per second, shithead. Per second, as a fucking velocity. You will now travel 9.8 meters per second, and if no other gravity acts on you, you would just continue at 9.8 meters per second. That's a velocity. You seem angry. Can't we just discuss this? I've been doing this for 2 years, and morons like you just keep showing up saying, personally instruct me, please. I'm too fucking stupid. I can't watch more of your videos. I don't care that you said it 658 million times that it's per second force. It's not a per foot force. So no, we can't really. How high do you rate the probability that you are wrong about this? Wrong about what? That it's a 9.8 meters per second? Wrong that momentum has to be conserved? Wrong about what exactly, fuckhead? Jeez. Yeah, it's 0%. That's right. I believe it's 0% that you don't have to conserve momentum. I think it's 0% that kinetic energy landed us on the moon. Okay, because it wasn't in the goddamn computer that controls the lunar module. The lunar module that landed on the moon didn't have 1/2 mv squared in it. Because guess what? It has no use for a fucking fable. A fable's not going to get you on the moon. Understanding that it's mass moving a velocity, and that's the nature of thrust. That's the nature of energy. Energy is mass moving. Okay, that's what NASA understood. That's how the goddamn thing landed on the fucking moon. So I think there's 0% chance that I'm wrong, that momentum is what makes things, that gives things energy in the universe. And I'm in pretty damn good company because Galileo thought so, Descartes thought so, and Newton thought so. So I think I'm doing okay, fuckhead. And I think you assholes believing in this mushy, girly, fucking Leibnizian religion, you're the dupes and the suckers. Okay, is there anything that could make you change your mind? Yeah, piece of evidence. Just show me something. So show me one fucking thing, okay? One car, one boat, one tricycle where I have to pour in 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. Just show me one fucking example. Show me a bowler, and I give him a 16-pound ball and he throws it. And then I give him an 8-pound ball, and just show me that he can't throw it twice as fast. Because he doesn't have 4 times extra energy to do it. It doesn't matter whether you're asking for instruction, you're making claims, and I'm counting your retarded, stupid, moronic claims. Okay? Your claims are wrong. It does not take 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. It's wrong. It's stupid. It's retarded. It's unevidenced crap. And the fact is you only believe it because you haven't done any research. Go look up Leibniz. Go look up the really brilliant arguments he made. Because guess what? He didn't make any. His argument was, God says so. Yeah, and you're countering them with shit. You're countering them with facts that don't exist. You're saying it always takes 4 times the energy to lift a barbell. When I'm saying, no, you could take 100 times the energy, or you could take twice the energy, or you could use exactly the same energy. It's up to you. All right, so Tim says, acceleration is just a means that just means that the change in velocity continues over time. No, it doesn't. That's not what acceleration doesn't necessitate that the acceleration happens all constantly. An acceleration can be a one-time event. Oh, God damn it. The velocity doesn't stop changing after 1 second. Oh, damn it. Yeah, it can. In gravity, it's a constant force, so of course it does. But it doesn't. There's no reason to turn that into a mathematical squaring of the actual acceleration number. You don't, because the unit you're putting a square on it indicating it can happen over and over again, doesn't mean that you square the actual quantity. The change in velocity persists. It's the force that continues. Well, again, and only in the case of gravity. I mean, most forces are not constant forces. Doesn't matter. You're the one whining that you're not seeking instruction. I'm telling you why I'm arguing with you is because I don't give a fuck whether you're looking for instruction. I'm going to tell you you're misinformed, and I'm going to explain to you the truth. Dumbass. You're saying something wrong. I'm going to say, hey, that's wrong. So go ahead, make an argument for Jesus, and I'll make the counter argument that you're a silly person who believes in a fucking fable. Let's see. Tim Johnson, that's right. The speed is the rate of change of the distance. So, again, it's just such baby talk to sit there and worry about accelerations which happen either very quickly, as Newton said, or over a long period of time. It doesn't fucking matter. It's the net change that's going to be the system's change. There's no point in talking about this without either quantifying what you're talking about. Are you talking about a net change in a system, or are you talking about a system that's constantly changing and therefore has no net condition? Acceleration is the rate of change of the rate of change. Oh, just too silly. Too silly. No, it's just a rate of change, and that's all it is. And that rate can happen for 1 second, it can happen for 5 years. That you have to qualify. You have to state that variable, or it doesn't make any sense to talk about an acceleration. And you're saying all accelerations are continuous accelerations, where that's just plain shit. Change in position. I mean, you really think that's a good argument, Tim? To play this game and say a change in position, not distance? Of course it's distance. The change in the position is a distance. It's a material three-dimensional universe. It's just baby talk to sit there and play games with this position versus distance thing. The point is the distance you travel at different speeds because of gravity, okay? If you're going to measure how far it's going to travel because of the momentum it has, how long it would take to take the momentum away, well, in gravity it takes longer because the faster thing moves through the gravity quicker. Damn it. So it doesn't have as much friction on land, and obviously when you're shooting it up, it matters how long you're in it. It doesn't matter how far you travel, it just matters how long you are exposed to the force. And obviously that means that things that are traveling against the gravity, as Galileo pointed out, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, you just keep gaining an awful lot of distance, and you don't have to do any work for it because you've created a velocity that gets you through the gravity so fast that you don't get any gravity per distance, you get it per second. I thought we were talking about free fall. Oh, again, just too silly. Free fall is the only way you can acquire more and more velocity. If you interrupt your free fall, you go back to zero. Okay, you can't accrue a velocity if you keep giving it away. All right. I thought we were talking about free fall. After 1 second of free fall, you were falling 9.8 meters a second. Right, but you only fell 5 meters. Okay, 4.9. After 2 seconds of free falling, you're falling 19.6. Exactly. You only got another 9.8. That's all you got. You only got 2 units of 9.8. How is that 4 times the energy? How is 2 units of 9.8 4 times? Your speed increases 9.8 every second. Right. And it only doubled. Your speed only doubled. You traveled 4 times the distance. You only doubled your speed. 2 seconds of free fall is the same as 1 second, 4 times 1 second. 4 times the distance. 2 seconds in gravity, 4 times the distance. Dumbass. Your speed increases 9.8 every second. Right. That's 9.8 meters per second. Right. Where are you counter-arguing anything? It's not per second. Again, you can just keep saying per second. It makes no sense, and it'll get you wrong answers. So keep saying it. Keep being a baby. Keep being a moron. Keep being a belligerent, retarded idiot, and saying something completely redundant for which you have no evidence. Dropping 2 seconds does not mean second squared. If I drop only 2 seconds, if I'm only in the gravity 2 seconds, how does squaring the seconds make any sense? I went 9.8 meters per second. I should square 9.8. But I was only in the gravity 2 seconds. Why don't I just multiply 9.8 times 2, and then I'll get 19.6, which is the right answer. If I square 19.8, I'm going to get a really wrong answer. I mean, I'm going to get a gigantically wrong answer. I don't agree with any of your last lines. It's all baby talk. You just conceded it's 9.8 meters per second. You said it was in the gravity 2 seconds. You're saying 2 times 9.8 is 19.6, which I agree with. And then you're telling me, no, it's per second, so it's 9.8 squared. I'm saying the right answer isn't 9.8 meters per second squared. I will not be going whatever that is. I mean, 10 times 10 is 100. I mean, I will not be going 100 meters per second. I'll only be going 19.6 meters per second. I mean, you can't do your own math. I'm sorry, you're this stupid. It's 9.8 meters per second. You're saying that's my velocity, that was my acceleration. That's what I'm supposed to square, 9.8. I square 9.8, I get 100. Okay? I don't get 19.6. I get 100. Again, if you square your fucking acceleration, you're still going to get a very wrong answer. You fall 4 times the height in gravity. You go twice the speed. You weigh only twice as much. Okay? And it only takes twice the time. Those are the facts, shithead. And you're saying all those 2's equal 4. Somehow I have 4 times the energy. So I'm only going twice as fast, but I have 4 times the energy. I only weigh twice as much. If you let me hit a scale, I'll only deflect the scale twice as much. I went 4 times the distance, but I'm only going to deflect the scale twice as much. So hitting the scale with twice as much weight, instantaneous weight, okay, means I have 4 times the energy. That's the illogic of what you're saying, shithead. It's just that they're just so belligerent. They just won't let it go. So they won't deal with that simple argument. How does twice the weight equal 4 times the energy? Your speed is measured in meters per second. What is your acceleration measured in when free falling? Again, you keep arguing that the acceleration is something other than just 9.8 meters per second. It's just 9.8. There's nothing more. You're not getting more per second. You're not getting a squared thing per second. Per second, you're not squaring it. It's not 100 meters per second. It's 9.8 meters per second. Not 100 meters per second, 100 meters per second, 100 meters per second. Wrong answer, fuckhead. I agree with all those facts except the amount of energy. You have 4 times the energy. So he's just going to keep saying it. Okay, you have 0 evidence is my argument. 0. You can't link to a single fucking video showing that to be true. Levers prove it to be a lie. Springs prove it to be a lie. Guns prove it to be a lie. Everything proves it to be absolute crap. Because none of those things create any of this extra energy. NASA doesn't use it because it doesn't fucking work. Come back. I see there's lots of discussion today. Oh, fuck. Well, it's not really discussion. It's just belligerent asshole saying, I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. And he doesn't care about rational arguments. I don't care that it's twice the time. I don't care that it's only twice the weight. I don't care that it's only twice the velocity. I insist it's 4 times the energy. And I have no experiment I can show you. I will never show you it taking 4 times more gas to go twice as fast. I'll never show you that being true. I'll just tell you it's true. It takes 4 times the energy to depress a spring twice as much. So Hooke's law isn't true. I put twice the weight on it, it compresses twice as much. So twice the weight is 4 times the energy, is your theory. Something that weighs 4 pounds is 4 times as heavy somehow. I have to use 4 times more energy to lift 4 pounds than 2 pounds. I mean, these are stupid arguments. 2 sticks of butter somehow uses 4 times the energy. I have to use 4 times the energy to lift 2 sticks of butter than if I lift the butter individually. 4 times the energy if I do it together. If the 2 sticks are stuck together, it takes 4 times the energy to lift them. I mean, fuck you. Too silly. Alright. 9.8 meters per second is a speed, not an acceleration. I don't understand how you could possibly know the difference between an acceleration, a rate of acceleration. It's a rate. All accelerations are not per second squared. So you're a complete moron to argue that every acceleration is per second squared, because it isn't. So the word acceleration is used for cars. Do you think cars accelerate per second per second? No, they don't. They accelerate per a specific amount of time. Nobody would say per second for a car's acceleration because they know it isn't a constant force. So just lie some more, you stupid fuck. Oh, it's not about displacement. Displacement is a measurement. Scales measure weight very reliably. Okay, they don't fail to work. Hooke's law is important. All right, and it's not the example I gave you. I gave you a clear example. You're saying that when I lift an individual stick of butter, it takes a certain amount of energy. But if I lift 2 of them together, it takes 4 times the energy. That's fucking retarded. The problem is that random people just pop into the chat and argue the conventional physics points without first even trying to understand what you are saying or watching your videos. Waste of time. Well, I don't know. Is it a waste of time? I don't know. Do you think anybody's ever going to do better than that? Do you really think that even if I get a physicist to argue this subject, that they're going to bother looking up a Leibniz? You really think they're going to do it? That they're going to take any time to understand the de Chatelet-Clay experiments? No. They're not going to do any of this stuff. So they're just going to keep spouting it because they really haven't thought about it very deeply, and they haven't really recognized that, yes, it does say right on the thing, 9.8 meters per second. And kind of obviously it's a time-dependent force. And it's about how much time I'm in it. So if I mean, Chris Fuckhead, you really think this analogy doesn't work, right? I have a gravitational body here, the Earth. I'm going to fly by it. There's a certain amount of gravity that's going to affect me. You don't understand that the slower I go by the Earth, the more likely it is I'm going to crash into the Earth. And the faster I go by the Earth, the less likely I'm going to be bent at all. You don't understand the time dependency, that the only thing that makes the difference between how I'm going to be affected, how much I'm going to be bent, is about how fast I go through the gravity. The faster I go through it, the less it affects me, the less work I have to do. Just a fact, kid. The less work I have to do to compensate for the effects of the Earth. So if I go fast enough, I have to do very little fixing of I got bent very little, I have to do very little compensating. And the slower I go, the more I have to fight the gravity to stay on course. You can't understand that simple argument? That decisively simple destruction of your fable. All right, car acceleration are typically expressed in time to go from 0 to 60. Well, that's a lie too, so that's just absolute nonsense. People constantly change acceleration, cruise control, lots of different things. You could sit there and use it, so it's more lies talking about car acceleration is typically expressed. Bullshit. People constantly talk about accelerating and decelerating to different speeds from different speeds. So Chris says he's watched a lot of my videos. Well, you obviously haven't watched enough, I guess. I don't know. Again, how do you counter-argue the decisive argument that this is gravity, I'm going to go by it. The faster I go by it, the less I get bent, the less work I have to do to stay on course. So the less work I have to do against the gravity, the faster I go through it. How do you explain how that's not true? All right. Gary was banning me for trying to argue against him back when I was on Stickam. Oh, fuck you. You're not making... if this is called argument, where you just repeat the same lie over and over again, that somehow you made an argument here somewhere, when you haven't made any argument that I haven't already debunked many times. Well, I'm just saying you're not disagreeing with it. You're not explaining how that can possibly be true, and then you say, but it takes more energy. When no, it doesn't. It takes less energy. The faster I go, the less energy I have to use. Gravity is completely time controlled, not distance controlled. That's the clear fact. Same distance. All I'm doing is changing how much time I travel the same distance, and the fact is that completely controls how much work I have to do. I'm not at all, by the way, I'm just saying I'm not at all embarrassed by the fact that once in a while I say, fuck this guy, this is enough of this horseshit, right? Because it is sort of a time-wasting thing. So, yes, if I banned you, it's not to my discredit, frankly. Because every time I've banned somebody, I haven't banned them for making good arguments. I've banned them for making bad ones. Really bad ones, over and over again. I mean, if all you got is mommy told me, Jesus is real, how long should an atheist argue that argument? The argument from mommy says so. I've asked you to link me to your leader. Link me to your good video that explains, why it's per second. And I'll point out how it's not at all explaining anything at all. It's just declaring. I've not made any claims that rely on any authority. You've made claims. You're stating that it takes 4 times the energy, and you've provided no reasoning or evidence to defend it. I'm saying until you show me anything taking 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast, you're just saying so. You said a spring takes 4 times the energy to compress it twice as much. I said, how could it possibly take 4 times the energy when all I have to do is this? And then I just do this, and the two of them stick. I just do that. I do those 2 actions, and somehow those 2 actions equals 4 actions by your magical, retarded, fucking accusation or statement. Your statement isn't proven by reality. It isn't proven by experiment. It's just something you're saying, and then you're saying, debunk my retarded statement. That's the same as mommy says so. It seems we are disagreeing on the definition of... I don't fucking give a damn about the fucking word acceleration. You can shove it up your ass. All things do is move a velocity. They can move a changing velocity or they can have a non-changing velocity. But all they're doing is moving a velocity. Okay, at any 1 second, all anything's doing is having a velocity. It doesn't have an acceleration. I have an acceleration. I have an acceleration. No, it has a fucking velocity, shithead. That's what everything has every moment in the universe. Nothing gives a fuck about what acceleration you have. The only thing something gives a fuck about is its velocity. So if a meteor is coming towards Earth, do you care about its acceleration, which is only 9.8 meters per second? Or do you care about the fact that it's moving 678,000 miles an hour? Which one is more important? The speed of the fucking asteroid or its acceleration? 9.8, it's moving 9.8 meters a second, acceleration. Yeah, it's going 10,000 miles an hour for your mother's little house. Which one bothers you? Which one matters? Acceleration. I'm just so sick of the fucking word. It's such a fucking meaningless, trivial, fucking shoulder pad kind of creepy culotte word. Ugh. Do you mean physicist people believe it takes 4 times as much energy? I don't believe it. Obviously they do, yeah. Why does this argument need to be made? That it take which argument are you saying? Do most physicist people believe it takes 4 times as much energy? The physicists are trapped. They have to say, well, yeah, it does. Because if they have to answer the question, but they really don't like to answer it. That's why there's absolutely 0 videos on the subject. There's absolutely no video where anybody ever tests it because they know the test isn't going to work and it's not coming out the way physics says. That's why we have to rely on all these amateurs doing these shitty experiments. It's because physics is scared to death to do the experiment because they know the outcome's not going to be what they say it is. They know if we actually took somebody to a bowling alley that they're going to be perfectly capable of throwing the 8-pound ball twice as fast as the 16-pound ball. Nothing's going to stop them from doing it. Anyway. So I guess Chris says to that, I claim it takes 4 times the energy to carry an object up 4 flights of stairs. So again, he keeps changing the subject. I'm going to do it the slowest hard way. I say it takes 10 times the energy if I take 10 times the time to go up the stairs. Yes, it'll take 10 times the energy. Because I'll have to fight gravity every second of those extra hours. The extra amount of time is extra time fighting gravity. So I already made this argument over and over again. If I go really slow into the gravitational field, I will be pulled into the earth. I'll have to use a whole bunch of energy to stop the gravity from pushing me into the earth. I mean, I've already made the decisive counter argument, and he just says it right again. He says the same exact shit all over again, even though I've debunked it numerous ways. So this is the definition of a troll, right? Right. Okay. It has a position and speed and an acceleration. I don't care about its speed. So this is the joke, right? When the meteor's coming into Earth, the amount of energy it's getting from Earth gravity is just a tiny, tiny few miles an hour. It doesn't increase its speed at all. Okay, the gravity of the Earth does nothing. The fucking velocity it already has is the really important part, okay? That's the part that's going to blow shit up. So you're a fool. You're just proving you're a fool. Okay, because the whole time it's in Earth gravity is so slight. It's only at best 2 seconds. That 2 seconds is only 16 miles an hour. I mean 19 miles an hour. That's all that was added to its velocity. So it's going 10,000 miles an hour, and you still think gravitational acceleration will be the important thing. I got to keep aware of its gravitational acceleration. Its gravitational acceleration is meaningless. It's 0 almost. Doesn't mean a damn thing. It's less than 0.00001% of its velocity. Gravity gave it nothing. It already has the energy. Oh, stupid fuckers. Okay. It has a position and a speed and an acceleration. I don't care about the speed. If its position is far enough away from my position. Well, what is... obviously, that's not the scenario. The scenario is that it's very far away from you, but it's moving very, very fucking fast. You know, it could be at the moon, and it's going to take it a matter of seconds to get to your house. All right, anyway, objects moving twice the speed have 4 times the kinetic energy. You just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. Doesn't mean a damn thing. That's the disagreement here. The equation is, see, keep saying it. It's a fucking idiotic. Yeah, I say there's no such thing. mv squared was invented by a guy called Leibniz. He called it the living force. He invented it because he thought Newton and Descartes were two atheists. He completely was resoundingly defeated as a lunatic and an asshole and a thief. When he died, nobody would bury him because nobody gave a shit about him because he was a jerk. Okay, and then 40 years later, they resurrected his stupid theory because there was a crazy tutor who tutored some French girl and told her the silly theory, and then she propagandized for the silly theory, and then they came up with these silly clay experiments using round objects, and they made it seem like it was 4 times the energy when it just looked like 4 times the energy because you are all too goddamn stupid to understand a real physics argument. And then they just believed in this crap. So no further evidence was ever compiled. The whole thing is a big pile of steaming shit, and you believe it, just like a religious theory. They told you so. You didn't do any research. You haven't looked into it. You're just a stupid dupe. Okay. So Chris Moore. Don't go really slow. Go at your regular walking speed, whatever this means. It will take you 4 times longer to go 4 times higher. What does that even mean? You don't walk higher. What does that mean? It's just too stupid a comment. All right. The point is the energy it takes is time dependent. How much gravity you are going to get assisted by or how much gravity you're going to have to repel or fight against is completely time dependent. 9.8 meters per second. It's only per second. If you go through the second really fast, you still only get 9.8. You go through it really slow, you only get 9.8. Well, you can't go through 1 second really slow, so this is the wrong way to say it. Through a distance. If you go through the distance fast, okay, then you're going to get the same amount of rain hitting you. That you go through the distance slow, you get more rain. Okay, so the rate that the rain is falling is the 9.8. And you're just arguing how much rain are you going to collect in the bucket. If I move the bucket fast, not much rain gets in the bucket. I move the bucket slow, a lot of rain gets in the bucket. Duh. That's how this whole video started, with that analogy. The bucket analogy is a pretty damn good analogy. Yeah, the atmosphere does. Yes, so asteroids actually slow down coming into the Earth. They don't speed up because of the Earth. They're actually slowed down by the atmosphere. But yeah, we're not talking about the atmosphere. So we're talking about, let's just take the atmosphere off like the moon, and we're just saying what's really causing the velocity of the impact. The velocity the asteroid comes in with, or the velocity created by gravitational forces of the moon. The moon doesn't make the damn asteroids go faster. Okay? I mean, in any significant way. Tiny percentage of the total velocity that hits, when the meteor hits, the total velocity, a tiny, infinitesimally small percentage of the velocity will be created by the gravity of the moon. I mean, I don't think in the history of asteroids, I don't think there's been any asteroid, okay, that ever hit the moon that had more than 0.001% of its velocity created by the moon's gravity. Let's see. Doesn't atmospheric slow meters? Okay, I get 200 characters per comment. That's not my fault. Okay, the fact that you can't make a video because you're pussy shit, and even since the Stickam days, you still can't make a fucking goddamn video. That's not my fault, shithead. Okay, you could make a response video, couldn't you? You could type in a comment section, couldn't you? Why are you choosing to talk in a chat section that has 200 characters? Who's to fault there? I mean, you can't take a little time to make a reasonable argument. I mean, I make videos every day. I do prepare for these videos. I have done my homework to make these videos. Well, why don't you do something similar? I thought you knew my example was about climbing stairs. Well, again, you keep changing the scenario. Climbing stairs isn't just about going up, it's about going sideways too. And again, it's about time, and you keep changing the subject. You can't acquire a velocity if you stop, and then you go, and then you stop, and then you go, and then you stop, and then you go. You will not be able to accrue a velocity. You will not be able to increase your velocity if you keep stopping, dumbass, and starting over. The whole reason why you fall through gravity very fast in free fall is, what is free fall allowing you to do? It's allowing you to keep the velocity you got from the first 9.8, and then you get to keep the velocity from the second 9.8, and then you keep the velocity from the third 9.8. You keep increasing your velocity. You can't do that if you keep stepping on a stair. God damn. It is curious, just how this is. It's not just about these people, but it just seems all people in general don't want to have a debate, right? And debate doesn't have to be in person. Debate is, I make an argument, you play my argument and counter argue what I said. So I show the example of going into gravity, and I say, look, you're bent based on how fast you go, duh. And then you explain how that isn't true. And explain how that doesn't obviously point to the fact that the faster you go, the less energy you have to use to stop the gravity from deflecting you. I mean, it's an absolute fact. So, unlike your theory, that it takes 4 times the energy, no, it takes less energy. The faster you go, the less energy you have to use. The faster I launch for in space, the further I want to go, the less I'll pay per mile in rocket fuel. It's just a fact. That NASA knows it. NASA tries to get into space as fast as it can. Why wouldn't it just, it'll just launch the rocket sideways and just slowly go up to the moon? It doesn't do that because that takes more energy, because it has to fight gravity a lot fucking longer. So it tries to get into space as quickly as possible. But yeah, this does illustrate just how it's just belligerent stupidity, because they really just don't care. Like I said, the last 3 or 4 videos I've made, I mean, I can't have, in the beginning of the video, I spell out the arguments. I mean, I just do the example after example after example, just point out how this cannot come out any other way. All right, and they will not play that video. They will not play those arguments and in any way point out how anything I said in those arguments is incorrect. They're decisive arguments. They close the door. They're a nail in the coffin, in the sense that there's no way to escape the logic. All right, so 2.5 hours, not bad. So maybe we'll let it go. So I'll give you some few more seconds to decide if you have anything else, any other rhetorical crapola. Let's see, why does it take 4 times the work to accelerate a body of mass twice as fast from rest to a stated velocity? So he's just re-asking the question. I wouldn't say why. I'd say, how can it take 4 times the work to go twice as fast? How is that possible? How could this ever be 4 times the work? I lifted this and put it on the scale. And now I lift this and I put it on the scale. And just when I do this, right when I do this, all of a sudden, instead of just being twice the work, I did this twice. I lifted something and put it on the scale. All of a sudden, 4 times the work. What do you mean it's 4 times the work? It was only twice the work all the way until I let go of that. It was twice the work. How is it 4 times the work now? I mean, that's how ludicrous what this moron is saying. Somehow lifting this up here is 1 unit of work. And I lift it up here again, and that's 2 units of work. But no, that was 4 times the work. I mean, it's ludicrous, right? I mean, it's nonsensical. It's bozo fun. Brozo fun. All right. Debate my MV square. These people keep evading the subject with nonsense. Yes. Okay. Because work is done is the force exerted times the distance over which the force acts. So what does that even mean? As pointed out, the distance isn't going to matter. Okay, if I'm falling in gravity, I keep gaining. With every 9.8 meters, I'm gaining insane amounts of distance. So by the 3rd second, I'm getting for free, 5 units of distance. And I don't have to do any work. It's just where I've already gained 5 units. And then I'm going to add another 5 meters. So I'll go, 5 times the distance plus 5 more meters. And then it'll be 7 free meters. And then it'll be 9 free meters. So the longer I'm falling in the gravity, the distance is increasing by huge amounts for every little tiny 9.8. I just get 9.8 more. I'm just going 5 meters faster per second, in the average. That's how much I actually gained, was only the 5 meters. But the distance I traveled was gigantic. I mean, it's just silly to keep telling me gravity's a distance-dependent force. It's clearly a time-dependent force. Oh, it's just amazing. As the speed increases, the distance over which the force acts also increases. So again, you're saying it's not actually true. The force only acts on you for a tiny percentage of time. Okay, it's just this 1 unit of time. You can travel this far in the 1 unit of time. You can travel this far depending on how much velocity you have. The more velocity you have, the more distance you'll travel, and you will not need any acceleration to help you. Well, who cares if 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 equals 25? Why is that significant? Why does that mean a damn thing to anybody? Why is that significant in any way? Oh, you're just amazing. Back to non-baby talk. If the sun were to suddenly change direction, it would have to be moving insanely fast, right? 2/3 the speed of light or something. We don't think photons that were previously emitted and are halfway across the universe are affected, correct? You can't affect the photons that already left. No, ever. They're already gone. Oh, amazing. Whatever. So he says 9.8 newtons times 25 meters is about 250 joules. So what? It's completely contrived, okay? So you can keep pretending your joule number means something, but it doesn't. Oh, just amazing. If you agree, then the new field of photons begins propagating out of the sun, and it takes time. All the objects out in the universe will now see the photons of the sun coming from a different direction. Well, no, they won't, so I don't even understand what the fuck you're talking about. Obviously, if the light bulb moves to a different location, it's going to produce photons in a new location, but that's not what we're talking about. You were talking about aberration, which was some effect because of the object receiving the photon is moving. The fact that you move the object producing the gravity, of course, if you move the thing producing the gravity, you're going to change the gravity field. But it's going to take 8 minutes in the case of the Earth to know that you did it. If the sun blew up and disappeared and it was producing no gravity, it would take 8 minutes for us to know, because the light is already heading for us. The gravity effect has already been created in the space, and that effect is going to still exist, and it's still going to hit us. So the photons that the sun is producing right now, in my case, aren't going to stop. It's going to take 8 minutes before they disappear, if the sun disappears. So what? What's your argument? I just don't understand what you're hanging on here. Oh, it's just too silly. Idiots everywhere. Let's see. Maybe you are thinking of impulse. That's force times time. Everything is technically, okay, impulse. There's no other way things hit each other than impulsively. Okay, so it can either be very quick or very slow, but it's still the same thing. It's by impulse. It's 9.8 meters per second. It means that it's a constant force. Well, do you think the constant force doesn't have some mechanism to it? I mean, they say gravity moves at the speed of light. Well, do you understand it like that? Like maybe it's photons, maybe it's bits of stuff coming at a regular interval. Obviously, that would all be impulse. So it doesn't mean anything to say the word impulse. It doesn't change anything. The point you're making really is that, oh yeah, well they also do these formulas when they are actually serious and they want to get a right answer. They actually use momentum instead of kinetic energy. Force times time is momentum. That's Newton. All right, this is what I've been talking about the whole time. The change created in the field is moving, and Carlip's quote was about the test particle C's. Where did he mention the fucking goddamn either one of them were moving sideways? Where did he make any kind of analogy to the charge that you're sending the electron towards moving away? Where is that in the argument somewhere? Oh, fuck. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, this is so easy to model. How can you keep fucking this up? The test particle sees the instantaneous position. Where was the position changing? Who said the position was changing? Of course, if you change the position of the sun, you're going to change eventually what hits me. But it's going to take time. For fuck's sake, it's going to take a full 8 minutes. Position of the moving charge, not the position needed, retarded by the speed of light. Again, I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. Where were we talking about moving the objects that you were making a gravitational comparison between? I don't even understand. And why would you think, again, it would matter? Because it takes 8 fucking minutes in the case of the Earth and the Sun. How could there be an aberration? It's a constant force if you keep them in a constant position. If you change their positions, it's not a constant force anymore. Duh. But it's going to take 8 minutes for it to change. The constancy is going to take a long time for you to feel any of the changes. For them to get to you. But once they get to you, then if the change is constant, then you'll adjust to the new constant force. But if the change is constantly inconstant, well then how can you even make a fucking rational argument about aberration? Of course there's aberration if you're moving the position of the objects. Oh, shit. I just don't know how you can't just analogize it as stated to a light bulb and then explain how the light bulb analogy doesn't work. If the photons were oppositons and they didn't push you, they pulled you. Just explain to me how this fucking problem arises. No, the only thing the goddamn electron or the charge or the test particle can possibly see is the field. It can't see anything else but the field right in front of it, okay? It's an illusion to say it's seeing the object, right? I'm not really seeing my computer screen. I'm seeing an image of it that's a few milliseconds old. I can't look at the stars in the sky and say I'm seeing the stars. I'm seeing where they were 1 billion or 10 billion years ago. I'm not seeing anything but an illusion. I'm not seeing them. I'm seeing the force they emitted. That's what I'm always going to interact with. I can't interact with anything else but the immediate thing hitting me. I can't interact with the thing that hasn't sent me information yet. You can't see Mars where Mars actually is. You can't see Venus where Venus actually is. I don't want to, this is going nowhere, okay? The argument is it doesn't take 8 minutes. Carlup says this is well known for both electric fields and gravitational fields. I'm saying it's a lie. If they're saying it can communicate with anything other than photons between the two objects, the only thing they can communicate with is photons. Photons can move tiny, 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 infinitesimally small distances and therefore be going insanely fast relative to the distance. So if you're going to say to me that you have a test particle that's an infinitesimally small distance from an object that's charged, well then yes, it's almost seeing exactly where the other object is, because there's actually no time delay between when the force gets to it and when the force was emitted almost. But other than that, okay, it's always going to be reacting to the field that was created by the object at the location it happens to be at. It can only react to the field. It can only react to the energy that has reached the position it's sitting in. And that's all it can react to. I don't know what velocity-dependent component means. You're talking about the fact that somehow the amount of photons hitting the object changes. I'm saying you can't change how many photons are hitting the object unless you change the distance between the objects. Of course, as you change the distance between the objects, you will change how much hits them. But if I make the velocity in orbit around the sun, you will get hit with the same amount of photons all the fucking time. You can't increase or decrease the number of photons you're going to hit. Well, watch the video from 2 days ago. The beginning of that video. I think it was 2 days ago. It goes through these very arguments, okay? It's the MGT. It's proving it's MGT. It's not MGH. Look, Tim, when you say fields, what are you saying? See, I'm saying to you, look, the field is just like you could think of the photons, little individual bits of stuff flying off of something. That's what the field is. The fields can't have a velocity-dependent component. The stuff, the little bits, don't care. If I move towards the light, it's going to get blue shifted. I move away from the light, it's going to get red shifted. Certainly there's a component in the sense of I change my position or the light changes its position or we change our distance from each other. But outside of that, any sideways motion can't mean a damn thing. I mean, whether we're swirling around each other constantly doesn't change the relative positions. I'm at the position where you get hit with 500 photons a second. If I don't change my distance from the object emitting the photons, I can't change how many photons are hitting me. Alrighty then, so it's almost 3 hours. I probably should linger for another 8 minutes, but we'll see. Unless we have some kind of meaningful comment, we'll leave it there. They are quite different. Well, whatever. Let's see what he said. It's hard to translate the conventional understanding into what I understand your theory of physics to be. Well, I'm saying that to me it's not very hard to understand a mechanical explanation. So I'm just saying theirs is entirely non-mechanical, non-real. It doesn't have moving parts. It has imaginary parts. So I'm saying the fact that you're having a hard time converting to recognizing the fact that things are actual things and they're not virtual things, they're real things, and real things have real properties, and the real properties aren't that complicated, frankly. The real properties of a photon are not that complicated. It moves from point A to point B in a straight line at a fixed speed. What's so complicated about that? Well, let's just say a field expands out from an object in all directions at the speed of light. Yes, a component field, a field of composite objects, of discrete little bits of light. Like, imagine an electric charge appearing out of thin air. A field then propagates out. Well, it's sort of a good example because guess what? The field is really just a reflection of the energy hitting it. So the charge is only charged because energy is hitting it and it's reflecting it. That's where the charge comes from, because it's reflecting the energy. Okay, anyway. Hopefully the modern debate gives you a worthy opponent who knows their stuff. Well, we'll see. I don't think it's going to do anything, frankly. The whole channel seems to be a buffoon channel. Flat Earth and Christian versus Christian, frankly. I don't even know if they have any decent atheists on that channel. They all seem like wooey fucktards, so I don't have much confidence, frankly, that they'll be able to find a physicist or somebody who knows anything about physics, frankly. If that charge appears has a velocity, if that charge that appeared has a velocity, yes, it's clearly going to do the redshift thing, it's frankly, but you'd have to, the only way you're going to notice it is you have to be able to detect things moving the speed of light. But anyway, the field also has the same velocity. No, it doesn't. It's going the speed of light. The field already is going the speed of light. The field isn't going some other speed, so it's already going the speed of light. It can't go any faster than that. That is what Carlup says. Well, I don't care what he says. I mean, they say there's neutrinos. They say lots of stuff that is completely debatable. So I don't care what he says. He has no evidence, okay, that the field is in any way retarded in its progress because, frankly, unless the particle itself is moving something close to, like 3/4 the speed of light, it's not going to change the pattern much. I mean, something moving 10 miles an hour is not going to, the light bulb moving 10 miles an hour, I'm not going to see it turn blue. It starts moving towards me at 10 miles an hour, it's not going to turn blue. I'm not going to see it. All right. Let's see. And I wanted to see if you agreed. I don't agree that the field just goes, bring, there's a field. I am saying the field is a reflection, so it has to exist, and the objects have to have time to reflect. So you have to hit it, and then they move away at the speed of light. So the field takes time to create, because it can only move at the speed of light. So if something poofed into existence, if a new sun popped into existence 10 billion light years away, it would take 10 billion light years for us to know it popped into existence, okay? So the field is going to take time to propagate. All right, but that's not this conversation. That's not, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about somehow the field innately changes because this other object is moving in the field, and somehow the sun knows the Earth moved towards it. The sun couldn't give a shit because the sun is such an irrelevant size comparison. Now, if you're telling me the charges have equal charge, that this is an electron and a proton or an electron and an electron, well, that's like two suns interacting. It's going to be a lot different. They basically argue you can't have stable gravitational orbits unless it is true about the field having a velocity. Well, it's just absolute fucking goddamn nonsense. The two can't be compared that way. The Earth is not a charge. The sun is not a charge. I mean, it's just totally inappropriate to do that. And again, in microscopic objects, the speed of light is much more relevant than to us. To big giant things like the sun and the earth and their velocities, the speed of light is out of the question. It's beyond our having any meaning to us. Clearly, between an electron and a charged object, the speed of light is much more significant. Fuck. They basically argue, anyway, the same argument of field velocity applies to charges and gravity. I'm just saying, I don't agree. I don't think this is at all reasonable for you to sit there and tell me you can explain gravity by using charges. It's just totally wrong thing to do because of that scale problem. Because one is so much closer to the speed of light and the other is so far away from the speed of light. Obviously, the field between an electron and another electron is changing at an insanely fast rate compared to how fast the rate changes for us and the sun. I mean, it's just an insane comparison. Distance matters, and you're comparing something that has no distance between it almost, and something that has an insane amount of distance between them, and you're saying we're going to compare those two things because distance doesn't matter. No, distance of course is insanely important because the speed of light is completely dependent on it. I didn't say gravity has anything to do with electrical charges. I don't know. Can anybody else explain to him that that's all he's done in this comments section the whole fucking time? Okay, the two forces are just described by fields. Well, again, I'm not going to argue with you. They're not fields, but whatever. They're objects. The objects in the world of the electron, another electron is visible. In our world, it isn't. This is just absolute baby talk. Okay, field isn't a field, isn't a field, isn't a field. The field, okay, between the Earth and the fucking sun is a lot different than the field between an electron and a proton. For fuck's sake, the scale is insanely different. So 10 to the minus 32 different, or whatever the fuck the number is. 10 times the 32nd difference. It's just 64, maybe the number is. It's a huge goddamn fucking difference in the amount of time it takes for this field to interact with each other. Oh, fuck. Anyway. The two forces are just described by fields. Now, it's not that simple, and that have the same velocity-dependent component. Well, how can you say velocity-dependent component when it's 10 to the 32nd difference in scale, size? How can you possibly say that? I mean, obviously the velocity component matters on the electron scale. It doesn't matter at all on our scale. Just amazing. I mean, the photons that travel billions of light years to hit us, when they hit one of my atoms, the atom can't tell the difference. The photon could have come from 10 feet away, or it can come from 10 billion light years away, and it hits one of my atoms. It's the same exact photon to it. It doesn't know the difference. I mean, the small scale universe is seeing something entirely different than what we're interacting in. I'm just repeating what they say. Why are you doing that? I mean, this is a convolutedly silly argument. I'm just saying right on its face, it's a silly argument. You cannot compare a photon hitting something, comparing a photon hitting a giant planet and a photon hitting an atom. You can't do that comparison and say they should act the same way. It's not the same event. All right. The whole point of this is I was curious what your theory said about it. Well, I'm just saying the theory, I've already pointed out, the theory isn't harmed by any notions of these fake arguments against particle theories. These have been around for hundreds of years, these fake arguments, that somehow the gravitational force changes as you move. No, it doesn't. All right. So now we have officially gone over the 3-hour mark, so that's enough. So I should politely say thank you for your participation, but it was all quite frustrating and irritating, to tell you the truth. But whatever, that's the way it goes. Life on the internet and such. So, we only got up to 14 viewers. It's pretty poor, but whatever. Anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. This has been at draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but who cares? Nobody wants to debate anything. They're all pussies. But anyway, till the next time and such, so forth and whatnot.